Hey guys, tonight we slip into a role you probably never imagined wanting, because honestly, you probably won't survive this. You're about to become a plague corpse collector, one of the most feared and despised jobs in human history. Imagine the cobbled streets of a medieval city, the air thick not with the comforting scent of bread or roasting meat, but with something rancid, sour, and unforgettable. Lanterns flicker against damp stone walls, and a muffled cough echoes from some darkened window. It's the 14th century, and the Black Death has taken hold. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is right now. I always love picturing this strange little global bedtime gathering. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shuffle forward, and the overseer thrusts a hooked staff into your hand. It's simple wood, tipped with iron, and he gives you a glance that says, "You'll need this more than bread." Your first task is waiting at the far end of the alley. There's a door marked with a crude cross daubed in red. No one answers when you knock, and that silence feels heavier than the staff in your grip. The truth is, plague corpse collectors were not volunteers driven by noble causes. Often, they were people with no other choice. The desperate poor, the criminals offered reprieve from punishment, or those already half shunned by their community. Historians still argue whether some collectors were forced into service by law, or if it was only the poorest who stepped forward willingly for the dangerous wages. Either way, you have no illusions. This is not a career to brag about at family dinners. You press your shoulder to the door and it groans open. The air that spills out is not just air. It's a presence, thick, sour and strangely sweet, like meat left too long in summer. You gag, your mask, cloth soaked in vinegar, barely helping. That quirky remedy, vinegar-soaked cloth, was actually believed to purify the air. People thought disease floated like invisible poison called miasma. Modern science knows it wasn't the air itself, but fleas on rats carrying Yersinia pestis. Though good luck convincing anyone of that while you're choking on this smell. Inside, you see them. The family, crumpled like discarded dolls. A woman with hair splayed across a rush mat, a child curled against her hip, and a man slumped in a chair, mouth agape as if mid-protest. You freeze, because this is your first collection. They look more like people than bodies. For a heartbeat, you almost expect them to stir, but you know they won't. You have to work fast. The longer you hesitate, the more chance the neighbours notice and mutter about how clumsy you are. Reputation, even in corpse collecting, matters. The staff helps. You hook beneath the shoulder, drag the man down, roll him to the floor. He thuds. You mutter a half apology, but the silence swallows it. You'll do this again and again until apologies dry up completely. Here's the practical part. Bodies aren't light. Even in death they cling with weight, as though gravity itself becomes greedy. You heave one across your back, staggering, legs trembling. Outside your cart waits, creaking, its wooden bed already streaked with dark stains from earlier runs. You drop the man in, one down, two to go. The neighbours peek from shutter slits. You can feel their eyes. Some believe just watching you invites the plague. Others see you as a necessary evil, someone to keep their streets clear. And a few, the bold or the cruel, mutter curses, calling you a ghoul. That's your social standing now. Needed, feared, despised. There's a strange irony in the job. You, surrounded by death, are more alive than most. You're still moving, still breathing. Every cough in your chest feels like a dice roll. Every flea that lands on your skin might be your executioner. Yet for now, You endure. You load the woman next, then the child. The small body hits you hardest. Something in you flinches, but you can't linger. If you cry, your mask will soak, and the vinegar smell will vanish beneath salt tears. Instead, you set the child gently on the pile, maybe more gently than the others. No one notices except you. That's your first house, just one. Tonight there will be many more. As you wipe your brow, you think about the odd rumours you've already overheard. Some say plague collectors secretly pocket rings and coins from corpses. Others insist collectors spread the plague themselves, dipping hands into pestilence and carrying it door to door. Historians still argue whether these accusations were exaggerations born of fear or rooted in truth. You don't know yet. But you do know every eye on the street sees you as halfway cursed already. The overseer claps your back, nearly sending you into the cart. "Good start," he says, voice dry. You wonder if he ever feels anything anymore. Maybe one day you'll be that way too. You roll your cart forward. The iron-shod wheels screech against stone. You try not to imagine the jolt rattling the bodies like sacks of grain. Already you're sweating through wool, your mask damp, your mouth dry. Somewhere in the night, a church bell tolls another soul lost. Maybe another house marked with red. Maybe another load for you. You pull the hood tighter around your face. You're only one night in, and already the city feels different, like it belongs less to the living and more to the dead. The first cart is always the hardest, they told you. The second one, though, it's the smell that gets you. You thought you'd already faced it, gagged through it, maybe even conquered it. But as the night drags on, you discover that there are layers to stench, like an orchestra of rot tuning its instruments. Every house, every corpse, every alley adds a new note to the composition. You find yourself learning a grim symphony. Your mask is soaked in vinegar again, the cloth clinging damp to your nose and lips. You've heard that some collectors chew herbs, rosemary or thyme, to mask the odour, while others clutch posies or press cloves between their teeth. A quirky trick, some even claimed, was stuffing raw onions in their pockets, as if they would suck the bad air away. Historians still argue whether these habits actually helped against infection, or if they were simply psychological comfort. Either way, nothing helps enough when the wind shifts and the rot burrows into your nostrils like a parasite. You wheel your cart into the square, and that's when it hits you like a wall. Here, the stench doesn't just float, it hangs, it clings, it wraps around you until your skin feels coated in it. The dead haven't been collected for a full day, and you can tell. Flies lift in a cloud when you approach, their buzzing filling your ears like a deranged lullaby. You wave them off, but they swarm back instantly, tasting vinegar, tasting sweat, tasting fear. The bell at the nearby chapel tolls again, slow and deliberate. With each strike you can almost feel another home sealing its shutters. The living are vanishing behind closed doors, while you're out here dragging carts of the departed. It's ironic. Everyone hides from the plague, but you walk straight into its heart. You approach your next house. A painted cross marks the door, but someone has added a desperate scrawl beside it. Pray for us. You don't pray. You can't afford to. The job is mechanical now. You lift the latch, brace your staff, and step inside. The smell here is sharper, less sour, more like iron left in rain. You realise the bodies aren't days gone. They're fresh. The father lies near the hearth, and beside him 2 children huddle, their little faces sunken and still. The mother is slumped against the wall, one hand outstretched toward them as if even death couldn't break her reach. You gag again, nearly tearing your mask off, but you stop yourself. One mistake like that, one breath too deep, and you could join them. You start with a father, hooking his arm to drag him across the floor. The sound of bone-knocking wood makes you flinch. You remind yourself, they're bodies now, not people. But your mind rebels. Your mind whispers that they were laughing here yesterday, sharing bread, living lives. You feel the room watching you, not with eyes, but with memory. You mutter a joke to yourself, dark humour bubbling up because silence feels unbearable. At least no one here will complain about my bedside manner. Your laugh is brittle, bouncing off the empty walls. Humour is one of the few defences you have. Without it, the silence would consume you whole. The children are the worst. You hesitate, your staff trembling in your grip. Finally, you scoop them gently, one at a time, cradling as if you're still afraid of hurting them. You place them on the cart with more care than the others. That's your secret rebellion against the cruelty of your work. Tenderness, however small, however futile. When you return outside, neighbours are gathered watching. They whisper. One woman spits in the dirt, not at you exactly, but near enough. She mutters that corpse collectors are cursed, that carrying bodies brings plague into the square. You want to snap back that someone has to do it, but what good would that do? You're a walking reminder of death. No defence will change that. Your overseer approaches again. He tells you to hurry. There are still more houses marked. You nod, but your legs feel heavy, weighed down not by the cart, but by the invisible pressure of a city that would rather erase you. You wonder if you'll ever again be able to enter a house and smell anything but decay. As you move on, you notice something strange. In one corner of the square, an old man has set out a pot of burning herbs. He's waving the smoke into the air with a bundle of twigs, convinced it will cleanse the space. A fringe belief, perhaps, but not uncommon. Some thought fire or incense could ward off disease. You pause to watch, briefly hypnotized by the curling smoke. You almost wish it were true. You almost believe, for just a heartbeat, that the smell thins around you. But then the wind shifts, and the reality returns with cruel clarity. No herbs can outmatch the raw power of death. The cart jolts as you roll onward, the body's shifting like cargo. You wonder if you'll ever get used to this, if your nose will dull, if your stomach will finally surrender. Other collectors claim it happens. One day, the stench just becomes part of you. That thought scares you more than the plague itself. Because if you stop noticing, then what's left of the person you were before this? For now you still notice. For now every breath is a battle. For now the stench is a constant reminder that you're alive and they're not. And so, the night continues, the smell deepening, your mask dampening, your steps dragging. You don't know how many more doors you'll open, how many more families you'll carry, but one thing is certain. The stench will follow you, cling to you, seep into your very skin until you can no longer tell where death ends and you begin. By now, the cart feels like an extension of your body, an unwelcome limb that drags behind you, creaking, squeaking, always hungry to be filled. The first night taught you the terror, the second showed you the stench, but the third lesson is physical. Death is crushingly, relentlessly heavy. Not just the thought of it, the weight. Every step reminds you that bodies are not simply carried, they are wrestled, hauled, dragged and coaxed like stubborn cargo that refuses to leave the world. You tug the handles, your shoulders screaming from strain. Each wheel groans as it grinds over cobblestones slick with night mist. The cart is already half loaded, and you haven't even reached the square. It lurches forward like a beast with no sympathy, the wood biting into your palms. And yet, compared to the houses still marked with painted crosses, this load is nothing. You know more waits ahead. Historians still argue whether cities underestimated how quickly the pits would fill, or if officials deliberately lied about capacity to keep panic at bay. What you do know is that your cart will always be heavier tomorrow than it is today. The supply of corpses never runs out, the market is endless. There's a difference between carrying the living and the dead. You've learned this the hard way. A living person, even unconscious, has tension in their muscles, a rhythm to their body that lets you shoulder them. A corpse, though, it resists you in silence. The limbs flop at angles they shouldn't. The spine bends wrong, and the weight is distributed all wrong, pulling against your grip. You try to lift one man today, broad-shouldered, probably a mason in life, and he drags you down with him like an anchor pulling a ship to the seafloor. You stagger, grunt, and finally manage to tip him onto the cart, but your back screams in protest. The men who train you laugh. You'll get used to it. You doubt it. No one gets used to hauling what feels like sacks of wet stone. Your body may harden, yes, but the weight never lightens. You catch yourself muttering to the cartload behind you. Hope you all don't mind economy seating. It's a weak joke, but it makes you smile for a heartbeat. Humour is a thin rope keeping you tethered to yourself. Without it, you'd snap under the burden. The square looms ahead, and with it another row of doors marked with red. A group of neighbours stands huddled, whispering as you pass. Some turn their backs, some spit, some trace crosses over their chests. Children stare with wide eyes until dragged inside. You're not simply a worker, you're a walking omen, a man cursed by touch. At the first house you find two sisters. They lie curled together on a straw mattress, arms round each other, as if clinging to comfort even in death. You hesitate. The younger one is small, hardly more than a child, and lifting her is easier, almost light. But light doesn't mean easy. There's a hollowness to it, a wrongness that makes your throat tighten. You place her gently on the cart, then turn back for the older sister, who is heavier, her body stiffened by rigor mortis. It takes effort to bend her limbs enough to pass through the narrow doorframe. By the time you're done, sweat pours down your spine despite the morning chill. The next house brings more. A father at the table, a mother by the window, a son slumped in the corner, his hand still clutching a carved wooden horse. The toy catches your eye. You pause, then pry it free and place it beside him on the cart. No one will notice. No one will care. But you will. Small rebellions like this let you pretend dignity still exists. When the cart is nearly full, you wheel it toward the edge of town, where the pits gape like open mouths waiting to devour. Here, the weight becomes almost unbearable. The slope down to the trench is muddy, and your boots slip. Another collector joins to steady you, both of you straining to keep the cart upright. The pit itself is a nightmare, rows upon rows of stacked bodies, lime dust sprinkled over them like flour on dough. Officials say it purifies, but you know it's mostly for the smell. Even then, the air is thick with rot. You and the others unload the cart. It's brutal work, dragging bodies limb by limb, tipping them into the pit. They land in grotesque heaps, twisting, folding, mingling with strangers. A woman's hair tangles in a soldier's belt. A child's arm bends across a merchant's back. Death makes no distinction. Here, kings and beggars, bakers and thieves, lie together in silence. One of the collectors beside you mutters, "At least they don't complain about crowding." You bark a laugh before you can stop yourself. The sound is harsh, almost bitter, but it helps. Without jokes, you would go mad staring into that pit. As you wipe sweat from your brow, you catch sight of a raven perched nearby, watching with bright eyes. Ravens thrive here. So do the rats. They scurry among the bodies, bold, fearless, their bellies round with feasting. You envy them in some twisted way. They don't feel weight. They don't carry burdens. They only eat and live. When the cart is empty, your arms tremble from exhaustion. Your shoulders throb. Your palms are blistered raw, and your legs ache with every step. And yet the overseer points you back toward the city. There are more doors, more families, more weight to carry. You drag the empty cart forward, every squeak of its wheels a reminder. Death doesn't pause, it doesn't rest, and neither apparently can you. For every load you deliver to the pit, another waits, heavier than the last. You know, deep down, that one day you'll be the burden. One day, someone else will wrestle with your dead weight, cursing your awkward limbs, sweating under the load of you. But until then, you keep pulling, keep heaving, keep groaning under the endless weight of the dead. Rats. You can't ignore them anymore. They're everywhere, moving faster and with more confidence than you ever thought possible. Their slick bodies dart from gutter to gutter, yellow teeth gnashing as they chew through wood, leather, even the softer parts of the dead when left unattended. At first you try to chase them, stomping your boots or swinging your hooked staff to scatter them, but soon you realize the truth. They are too many, and you are only one. They are the true rulers of these streets now, and you're just a weary guest dragging your rattling cart through their kingdom. The fleas follow. They're smaller, harder to see, but you feel them constantly, on your wrists, your neck, the backs of your knees. It starts as an itch, then a sting, then a welt. You scratch until you bleed. Some collectors say fleas don't bite them anymore, as if even insects can tell when a man is marked for death. Others insist the fleas carry the very heart of the plague. Historians still argue whether it was fleas alone or filth, or human touch that spread the Black Death so savagely. But for you, the debate is useless. Every time you feel the itch crawl across your skin, you wonder if this will be the bite that ends you. You roll your cart into a narrow lane and hear them first. The rats, squealing and chittering inside a boarded-up house. You shove the door open, and the sound explodes into chaos. Dozens scatter, their eyes glittering like beads in the lantern light. Some hesitate, bold enough to hiss at you, unwilling to give up their feast. And then you see what they were feasting on. A mother and son collapsed by the hearth, their faces pale, their limbs stiff. The rats were already at work, their slick bodies wriggling across flesh. You lunge forward, swinging the staff, shouting until the vermin scatter. You mutter through your mask, "Greedy little kings." The boy is young, barely more than 10, and lifting him feels wrong in its lightness. The mother is heavier, her weight awkward and limp, dragging against the doorframe as you wrestle her out to the cart. By the time you finish, you hear the rats creeping back inside. You know they'll finish what you interrupted. On the streets, neighbours watch. Some make the sign of the cross as you pass. Others spit into the dirt, muttering that corpse collectors bring death with them. You want to shout back, "The plague was already here before me," but you know it doesn't matter. To them, you and the rats belong to the same world now. Carriers, scavengers, cursed shadows that slip into houses and leave only silence behind. You scratch another flea bite on your neck and sigh. Some collectors burn their clothes after each round, convinced fire drives the pestilence away. You can't afford to do that. Your tunic reeks of vinegar and sweat, the mask sour and damp, the leather stiff from grime. You've heard another odd remedy. Some men carry frogs in their pockets, claiming the little creatures draw out the poison. Others rub onions or garlic on their skin. A few even tie toads to their ankles with string, waiting for the toad to swell with illness. Historians still argue whether people truly believed in these rituals, or if they were desperate gestures to calm their fear. Whatever the truth, when your own skin crawls with fleas, you almost wish for a toad strapped to your wrist. The shadows become your companions as much as the vermin. The alleys feel darker each night, lantern light shrinking, retreating from your path. Sometimes, when you're dragging a corpse alone, you swear you see shapes in the corners, thin silhouettes that move when you don't, whispers just beyond hearing. The old women in the market mutter about spirits of the plague pits, souls trapped without rest because the graves are too crowded. Whether it's madness or truth, you can't say. All you know is that when you hear a sigh behind you in an empty street, your blood turns colder than the night air. One evening, a black cat sits waiting at the crossroads. Its eyes glow in the lantern light, unblinking, its tail twitching like a pendulum. In other times, people might have cursed it as bad luck, but now you almost welcome the company. You stop, adjust your grip on the cart and whisper, "So, are you in charge here now?" The cat blinks, stretches, and disappears into the darkness without a sound. You chuckle under your breath, though the humour tastes bitter. Even animals won't stay long with you. You push on, the cartwheels groaning, the air filled with squeals, chittering, scratching. It's clear now. The city no longer belongs to its people. The rats and fleas thrive, fattening on what remains, multiplying as quickly as the dead pile up in pits. The living hide behind bolted doors. The dead fill your cart, and you're only the middleman, dragging one world into the jaws of another. The worst part is how quickly you get used to it. The squeal of rats no longer startles you. The itch of fleas becomes a background hum. The shadows you see out of the corner of your eye no longer send you running. The line between human and vermin blurs. Sometimes when a rat scurries across your path, you nod to it like an equal. Sometimes you whisper a joke to the fleas chewing your skin. At least someone still wants my blood. You roll the cart forward. Another house waiting, another door to open, another family for the pit. Behind you, the rats squeal with victory, bold and confident, as if mocking you for ever thinking humans ran this city at all. The cart jolts against the cobblestones as you steer it toward the edge of the square. You know where you're going, the pits. You can already smell them, even before the wind shifts to carry the heavy reek of earth mixed with rot. This is where your day's work always ends, and where the world itself seems to collapse in on itself. The pits are enormous scars dug into the city's skin. By day they gape open like the mouths of giants, their rims crowded with dirt piled high from frantic digging. By night, the lanterns cast long shadows that make the hole seem bottomless, as if you're standing at the edge of the underworld. You arrive just as another collector shoves a stiff body off his cart and lets it roll into the mass below. The sound is muffled, thud on flesh, not on dirt. You don't need to look closely to know what's down there. You can hear it. A slow, wet shifting, like a sea made of limbs instead of waves. One by one you lift your corpses. You tell yourself you're careful, but you're mostly efficient. A boy's head lolls, his hair catching briefly on the cartwheel before he falls free. A woman's arm gets tangled in the strap of another body, and you mutter under your breath as you work to pull them apart. This is the rhythm now. Drag, drop, adjust, repeat. And with every body the pit swallows more of the city's memory. The priests used to say prayers here, standing with their incense swinging, chanting over the heaps of the dead. Now most priests are gone, buried, fled, or too afraid to come near. Historians still argue whether the church abandoned its duties in these moments or whether it simply lacked the numbers to keep up. You know what you've seen. No bells, no psalms, no holy water. Just men like you, sweaty and silent, doing the work nobody wants to acknowledge. A fellow collector stands beside you, his mask tilted slightly off. His name might be Thomas, or maybe you just decided to call him that one night. His real voice is rough, the kind that scrapes your ears when he talks. He mutters, "They say this pit will be full by week's end, then another one to dig." He gestures with his chin toward the east field. You look at the hole and imagine earth cannot possibly hold so much sorrow. Yet every week the ground opens again, and you keep filling it. You've heard the rumours too. Some whisper that when the pit is finally closed, the bodies keep moving underneath. Gases bubble, skin swells, bones crack. If you press your ear to the soil, they say, you can hear the groans. Historians still argue whether such pits poisoned the air, spreading plague further, or whether they at least slowed contagion. You don't need debate. You have your nose, and your nose tells you the stench alone could kill. One night, as you toss another bundle into the dark, something odd happens. Instead of landing in silence, the body shifts strangely, rolling halfway back toward you. You frown, grip your staff and jab downward to nudge it in. But then you hear it, a faint wheeze. The man is not fully gone. His chest rises shallow, rattling like a wind through broken shutters. You freeze, torn between mercy and efficiency. To leave him is cruel. To climb down would be madness. Your fellow collector doesn't hesitate. He pushes the body deeper with his boot until the pit swallows him whole. "Better that way," he grunts. You nod, though your stomach churns. You tell yourself you're doing a service. You tell yourself he was already half dead. Still, the wheeze lingers in your ears all night. A quirky thought strikes you. In the market, before all this, they used to argue about the best place to bury a dog. Not near wells, or the water tastes funny, an old baker once warned. Now you wonder, where do you bury a city? Where do you put tens of thousands of souls when the ground groans under their weight? Sometimes you let your mind drift. You picture the pits as giant cauldrons, and you as some tired cook throwing in ingredients for a dreadful stew. A pinch of father, a handful of daughter, a dash of neighbour. You laugh to yourself at the absurdity, though the sound comes out brittle, almost like glass cracking. You imagine explaining it to someone 100 years from now. Yes, we made soup out of people. No, we didn't eat it. But the smell was everywhere. And yet, the work doesn't stop. The carts keep coming. The pits keep filling. The city keeps quiet except for the scrape of shovels and the groans of wheels. You sometimes wonder, what will happen when the pits are full and the earth has no more room to give? Will they burn the dead? Will they float them out to sea? Or will they absurdly just pile them on the streets and pretend it's normal? Historians still argue whether burning would have saved more lives, or whether it only angered those who saw cremation as unholy. You don't have the luxury to argue. You just keep lifting, keep dropping, keep pushing the world into its own grave. When you finally step back from the edge, your shoulders ache, your gloves are stiff, and your mask reeks of sweat and vinegar. The pit yawns wider than ever, filled with silence that is not silence at all. You think of all the names that vanished here, swallowed without ceremony. You try to remember even one of them, but the faces blur together in your mind, pale and swollen, eyes frozen in disbelief. You whisper, almost like a prayer, "I remember you," though you know it's a lie. As you turn your cart back toward the empty streets, a gust of wind stirs the stench from the pit, carrying it straight into your mask. You gag, stumble, and grip the handle tighter. Somewhere in the darkness, a dog howls, long and low, as if it knows what you just left behind. You pull your hood tighter and mutter, "Another night done." But deep inside you feel the pit has taken more than bodies tonight. It has swallowed another piece of you, and you wonder how much of yourself will be left when the ground finally closes over everything. The night stretches on, and still your work does not end. The pits never seem full enough, and the carts never seem empty enough. You steer your rattling cart down the narrow lanes, wheels squealing against cobblestones slick with grime, and you know what awaits you next. The houses. It is not enough to take from the streets. You must also enter the homes where families cling desperately to their loved ones, even after the breath has gone. You pause before a wooden door. The paint is flaking, the hinges swollen with damp, and yet you can feel life pulsing inside. Not healthy life, but the ragged rhythm of sickness. Through the cracks in the shutters, you hear muffled sobs. You rap on the door with your staff, the sound hollow and commanding. At first there is silence, then shuffling, then a voice. "No!" a woman cries from within, sharp and panicked. "You'll not take him, not yet." This is the moment you dread. Bargaining with the living. You do not relish the weight of corpses, but at least the dead do not argue. The living, however, cling with a ferocity that claws at your conscience. "Open," you say, voice muffled by the beak of your mask. "The boy must come." "He is only sleeping," the woman insists, her words trembling. "He will wake. I have prayed. I have given offerings. God will answer." You could leave, but you know the orders. If you walk away, the boy festers. His sickness festers. Then it spreads, and soon the neighbours cry out, and then the whole street becomes another grave. The magistrates are clear. Hesitation is as deadly as the plague itself. So you push. The door creaks open an inch. A thin face peers out, eyes red, cheeks wet. You glimpse the boy on the bed behind her, sunken, waxy, still. The woman's hands clutch the doorframe as though her very grip can anchor him to this world. "Please," she whispers, "let me keep him one more night." You almost say yes, but then you remember the stories. Collectors who allowed mercy, who let families wait until morning, only to return and find 3 more bodies instead of 1. The plague does not grant extensions, it only multiplies. You harden your voice, it must be now. Her eyes blaze, sudden fury overtaking grief. You're not a man, you're carrion yourself. You steal the dead like a thief in the night. The words sting, but you've heard them before. You step forward and she retreats, shoulders shaking, sobs breaking from her throat. You lift the boy, whose limbs hang limp, his head lolling against your arm. He's lighter than you expect, so light it feels like lifting a bundle of cloth. That weightlessness is the cruelest truth. Plague consumes not just flesh, but the very substance of life, leaving husks that hardly seem human. The woman beats her fists against your back as you carry him out. You do not retaliate. You do not speak. What words could possibly answer such a wound? She collapses to the floor as you lay the boy gently on your cart, and her cries echo through the night. You turn away quickly, because if you linger too long you will begin to doubt. This is not the only house. Door after door the pattern repeats. Some families hide their dead beneath blankets, whispering lies through the shutters, swearing no one has fallen ill. Others greet you with resignation, stepping aside with hollow eyes, their grief already too deep to resist. A few fight. throwing stones, waving knives, hurling curses that cling to you like burrs. You have scars on your forearms from one such encounter, when a desperate man slashed at you with a kitchen blade as you tried to lift his wife. Historians later will debate whether plague collectors were cruel servants of authority or reluctant saviours of the city. Some chronicles brand them as vultures, preying upon misery. Others insist their grim work prevented total collapse. You know only this. The truth lies in the middle, twisted and heavy. You're neither hero nor villain. You're necessity made flesh, duty carved into bone. On one street you find a door already ajar. Inside the silence is eerie. A single candle flickers, throwing long shadows over 3 figures stretched across the floor. No one is left to plead with you. No one is left to resist. You load them one by one, your cart groaning under their combined weight. In that silence, you find a strange sort of peace. Sometimes it is easier when grief has already consumed everyone, leaving only your task to complete. But the hardest moments are when the sick still breathe. You hear them sometimes rasping in the dark, their eyes rolling to follow your masked face. Are you their last vision before death? Do they believe you are death itself, come in feathers and leather to claim them? You do not answer. You cannot. You take only the bodies stilled forever, but you leave knowing the others will join soon, and you dread returning the next night to find them waiting. As dawn begins to pale the horizon, you push your cart toward the pit again, laden with the night's bitter harvest. Your arms tremble from fatigue, your mask reeks of sweat, and your chest feels hollow. Behind you, the cries of mothers, fathers, and children still echo in your ears. Ahead, the yawning pit waits to swallow what remains of those cries. When you tip the cart, the bodies slide down in a grim cascade. You stand there staring into the mass, wondering if the earth itself groans with the weight of so much sorrow. Then you force yourself to turn away. There are more doors tomorrow, more bargains, more desperate hands clinging to the dead. And as you trudge home in the thinning light, one thought needles into your mind. Perhaps, in time, the city will remember the plague, but it will not remember you. You will be only a shadow, a masked figure who came knocking, whose name no one spoke, whose hands carried grief from doorways into pits. Payment in coin, that is what you were promised when you signed on to the role of corpse collector. The magistrates had stood on the steps of the Guildhall, announcing with lofty words that those willing to brave the foulest tasks in the city's darkest hours would be rewarded generously. They made it sound noble, almost heroic, as if you'd be honoured like a soldier returning from war. But the reality, as you soon discovered, is far less glorious. Each week begins with the same ritual. You drag yourself to the Guildhall, a creaking timbered building that smells perpetually of ink and vinegar. Outside, a ragged line of collectors shuffles forward, each of you holding the weight of sleepless nights in your shoulders. The clerks sit at their desks, quills scratching lazily across parchment, cloths tied around their noses as if to ward off your contamination. When your turn comes, you mutter the number of corpses carted, the streets cleared, the hours endured. The clerk doesn't look you in the eye. He never does. He just sighs, reaches into a small box and drops a few dull silver coins into your hand. The coins land with a faint clink, and you stare at them, wondering if they are meant as reward or insult. Some weeks you receive less than promised. Other weeks you receive nothing at all, told that the city is strained, or funds are delayed. Patience is demanded of you, though your patience is the very reason their city still stands above mountains of unburied dead. You close your fist around the coins, but they feel cold, almost mocking. Each piece of silver weighs more in your conscience than it does in your palm, for you know it has been bought at the price of lifting lifeless children, hoisting stiffened fathers, and dragging entire families through the muck of alleyways. Every coin is a grim ledger of what you have carried, and though you scrub your hands raw, you can never quite rid yourself of the sense that death clings to the money as surely as it clings to you. You bring those coins to the market, but the reception is never warm. Vendors glance at your face, hesitate at your smell, and some even recoil outright. A baker once told you he would rather starve than touch your money, though later you caught him whispering with a clerk to arrange his bread for soldiers instead. Others accept your coin, but the portions are smaller, the fruit bruised, the prices raised by invisible margins. To them, you're not a labourer but a scavenger, someone profiting off misery, someone who grows richer as the city grows sicker. Neighbours whisper when you pass. Children are dragged away, their mothers glaring at you as if you yourself spread the plague. Your footsteps leave a trail of suspicion in every street. And though you scrub your clothes with lye, bathe in vinegar, and burn herbs in your room, there is a smell that never leaves you, a sourness that seeps into your pores. Sometimes you wonder if it's in your imagination, but then you see the way strangers flinch, their eyes darting, their lips tightening as they edge away. No, it isn't imagined. You are marked. The coins may buy food, but they cannot buy acceptance. They cannot buy warmth or companionship. Your own kin have turned from you. At first your sister left baskets of bread at your door, but the visit stopped. One night you dared approach her home. Her husband barred the door, fear written plainly on his face, muttering that you were not welcome. You heard your sister's muffled sobs within, but she never appeared. That rejection stung worse than hunger. Among the other collectors, you sometimes find a strange sort of companionship. You gather after shifts, masks piled on tables like grotesque trophies, cups of weak ale in your hands. For a few hours you share silence more than words. There are occasional jokes, brittle laughter echoing in dim tavern corners, but conversation rarely lingers. What is there to say when you all walk the same haunted streets, smell the same rot, and wonder each night if you'll wake to draw another breath? Camaraderie exists, but it is thin and fragile, a rope fraying under too much weight. Still, there's comfort in glancing across the table and seeing another soul just as broken as yourself. Their hollow eyes mirror your own. Their scarred hands prove you aren't alone. It is a quiet fraternity built not on pride but on shared exile. You all know the rest of the city despises you, even as it depends on you. And perhaps that knowledge binds you tighter than any formal oath. Sometimes you imagine leaving. You could abandon the role, slip into the countryside, seek work as a woodcutter or shepherd. But deep down you know it would be useless. No village would welcome you. Word travels faster than rats. You'd be branded plague-bearer, chased from wells and barns. Innocence is not something you can regain. It has been scorched away by your very occupation. And so you endure. You continue to queue at the Guildhall, take the meagre coins, pocket the silent scorn. You drag corpses by night and count coins by day, balancing your existence between survival and shame. The magistrates may say you are paid in silver, but truly your wages are mixed. Part coin, part fear, part loneliness. Payment is a curse as much as a reward. One evening you return home with your week's share, a meagre clinking in your pouch. You set the coins on your wooden table and study them in the flickering light of a candle. The silver gleams faintly, but to you it no longer shines. It is as though each coin reflects a hollow-eyed child, a lifeless hand, a neighbour's scorn. You rub one between your fingers and realize it feels heavier than gold because it carries more than weight. It carries memory. And in that moment, staring at the little pile, you understand something chilling. The true payment for your work is not the money at all. It is the steady erasure of the person you once were. With every coin you earn, a little more of you disappears. You blow out the candle, darkness swallowing the room, but the faint glint of silver lingers in your mind like a curse you cannot spend. The marks of your trade are carved into you more deeply than scars. At first, you believed you could shed them with a change of clothes or a long wash. But over time you realize the stain of your work is not merely physical. It seeps into every fibre of your being. The world sees it before you even open your mouth. You are recognized, avoided and condemned without a word spoken. It begins with your clothing. No matter how many times you replace your tunic or cloak, the fabric seems to absorb the scent of your work. Vinegar, herbs, ashes. None of them are enough to mask it. The odour clings like a curse, soaked into the seams, rising again each time rain dampens the fabric. Merchants sniff as you pass, apprentices wrinkle their noses, and housewives draw children closer, their hands pressed over tiny faces. It is not just smell, it is stigma, the unmistakable brand of a collector. Even your boots betray you. Their soles are worn not from walking countryside paths or cobbled markets, but from endless trudges through alleys slick with muck, grave pits half dug, and plague houses where floors creak under hidden rot. Their cracked leather carries the memory of filth no brush can scour away. Men nod at soldiers' boots, polished and proud, but they look at yours with revulsion, as if each step you take spreads contagion. Your hands are another betrayal. You wear gloves when you can, but there are times the work demands bare grip. Your palms are scarred from hauling carts and ropes, your fingernails forever darkened. Soap turns them raw, yet the grime lingers beneath your skin, and sometimes you wonder if it has become part of you. When you reach for bread at the market, the baker's eyes dart not to your face but to your fingers. Some vendors insist you leave the coin on the counter, refusing to brush your skin with theirs. You cannot remember the last time someone clasped your hand in friendship, but it is not only your appearance, it is the aura you carry, the way people instinctively recoil. In taverns, voices hush when you enter. Conversations tilt toward whispers, mugs lower to tables, eyes glance sideways. Men who would laugh heartily with each other shrink into silence around you, as though laughter might offend the unseen dead who follow in your shadow. The distance grows even when you sit alone, leaving you marooned at the edges of the room. You have become an island no one dares approach. Even the children know. They do not need to be told. They point, whisper, sometimes even jeer. Plague man, they call you, their voices sharp with cruelty born of fear. Once, a group of boys followed you through the street, hurling stones, shouting that your touch could rot their skin. You tried to shout back to scare them away, but their laughter only grew louder. Their mothers watched from doorways, not one stepping forward to stop them. To them you are less than human, an untouchable, a necessary evil. Superstitions grow thick around you. Some believe your shadow carries sickness. Others swear your gaze curses crops. A woman spat on the ground once as you passed, muttering charms under her breath to ward off your presence. Priests preach that those who handle the dead too freely risk their very souls. And though you know it is your labour that keeps the city from collapsing under pestilence, their words sink into the minds of listeners. Slowly you realise you have become the embodiment of fear itself. The shunning weighs heavier than the cart you drag each night. You return home after work, not to family, not to conversation, but to silence. Neighbours leave baskets at your door without knocking. Some avoid the street entirely, taking long detours rather than pass your dwelling. The loneliness presses close in those hours. You sit by a guttering candle, the walls leaning close, and wonder whether you're alive in the same way as the rest of the city, or whether you've already been counted among the dead. Yet paradoxically, your invisibility brings moments of strange clarity. While others turn their heads from plague pits, you look into them. Where others cross themselves and hurry past dying houses, you step inside. Your work brands you with filth and fear, but it also strips away illusions. You see the city as it truly is, a fragile place, always one breath from collapse, always dependent on people like you who bear the burden no one else will. You wonder if perhaps this is the cruelest irony, that those who should honour you most are the very ones who spit in your path. There are nights you lie awake, listening to rats gnawing in the beams, and ask yourself if you will ever be clean again. Not clean in the sense of soap and water, but in the sense of being touched without hesitation, greeted without suspicion, smiled at without dread. You imagine what it would feel like to walk through the market and be seen simply as a man, not as a plague's shadow. The longing tightens your chest until it aches more than hunger ever could. You begin to wonder whether these marks will outlast the plague itself. If the sickness ended tomorrow, if the bells ceased tolling and the carts rolled empty, would people forget? Or would they still see your clothes, your hands, your hollow eyes, and remember what you were? Perhaps this is the truest curse of all, that even if the pestilence dies, its stain upon you never will. And so, each day you wake, strap on your boots, lift your staff, and step once more into streets that no longer feel like home. You carry the marks with you not as choices but as chains. They are the uniform you never asked for, the badge of a service no one thanks you for, and the reminder that while you may still breathe, you already belong more to the dead than to the living. Strange cures and desperate beliefs swirl around you, tangled as thick smoke in the plague-ridden air. Each day, as you drag your cart through crooked lanes, you hear them whispered from doorways, muttered at street corners, or proclaimed by frantic vendors who see profit in sickness. Everyone clings to something, stone, herb, relic, or nonsense, to guard them against the invisible terror that stalks the streets, and you, who stand closest to death, are forced to listen, to witness, to carry the weight of their delusions as much as you carry their dead. Some believe jewels hold power. Crushed emeralds ground to a fine powder, they say, can be swallowed to purge the body of plague. You have watched wealthy merchants, pale and trembling, drink draughts of jewel dust in expensive wine, their lips glittering faintly as if death itself might be dazzled and turned aside. Others swear rubies, when worn against the skin, glow with protective warmth. But you've seen too many jewelled corpses to believe such charms. The pits do not care how brightly a body once glittered. Others turn to animals, frogs tied around the neck, dried toads sewn into pouches, or live chickens pressed against buboes in hopes the bird might draw out the poison. You once saw a woman cradle a hen to her swelling armpit until the bird flapped, screeched, and died in her lap. She screamed that it had saved her. She was buried 3 days later, clutching its feathers still tangled in her hand. Some smear pig's fat across sores, others burned snakeskins in their hearths to drive sickness out with bitter smoke. Each cure seems more desperate than the last, a frantic wrestling with fate. The apothecaries grow rich from such desperation. Their stalls overflow with powders of saffron and crushed pearls, oils infused with rosemary, sage, or wormwood. They sell vinegar sponges to press against the nose, vials of unicorn horn, which are nothing but ground ivory, and packets of mysterious powders said to ward away bad air. Some customers line up with coin, others barter heirlooms or family silver, their eyes wide with terror. You stand watching sometimes, unnoticed at the edge, knowing full well how many of those buyers you will soon carry in your cart. Superstitions, too, spread like rats. Children wear toad bones on strings around their necks. Men paint charms on doorways, triangles, crosses, circles, hoping to confuse the plague spirit. Women murmur chants as they scrub floors with urine, swearing it keeps away the black swellings. You hear bells rung at midnight, not to honour the dead, but to frighten away unseen demons. Priests thunder that the plague is God's lash, punishment for sins too many to name. They urge whipping, fasting, long pilgrimages to holy shrines. But pilgrims return as corpses, and even the whips cannot scour the pestilence from their backs. In the darkest alleys, you encounter stranger practices still. A man bleeding himself daily with leeches, his arms covered in purple wounds, insisting he is draining corruption before it takes root. A family burning sweet herbs until their cottage fills with choking smoke. Eyes streaming, children gasping for breath. But the parents beam, certain the foul air has been banished. Once you found a woman crouched in a doorway, gnawing raw garlic bulbs until her lips blistered, her breath so sharp it burned your eyes. She swore no sickness could pass through such a shield. 2 days later, you hauled her body from the same doorway. Some remedies verge on madness. People carry posies of flowers, pressing them hard to their noses until petals crumble, believing fragrance can block poisoned air. Others clutch written charms, words of Latin scribbled by monks or wandering scribes, tucking them under pillows, over doors, into shoes. One man paid a fortune for a scroll said to contain Solomon's wisdom. He read it aloud daily, yet you still found him slumped across his table, lips blue, the parchment stained with vomit. And then there are those who believe in sacrifice. Cats drowned in rivers, goats slaughtered in squares, sometimes even whispers of human offerings in hidden corners. You hear rumours of men burying strangers alive beneath crossroads, desperate to trick the plague into taking only one victim. Whether true or not, you see the fear in people's eyes, the hunger for someone else, anyone else, to bear the burden of their doom. You walk among them, listening, and sometimes you almost envy their faith. To believe a necklace of amber beads or a tincture of ground sapphire could protect you would be a comfort. But you, with your hands blackened by hauling bodies, know better. You have watched men with ruby talismans die screaming. You have carried women who reeked of herbs as much as of decay. You have seen whole families collapse despite prayers, charms, and bleeding. For you, no illusion remains. You know the plague moves where it will, blind to gold, deaf to chance, indifferent to human desperation. Yet you cannot help but wonder at times. In the small hours when you lie awake listening to rats skitter across beams, you feel a faint tug of longing. What if one of those remedies did work, if only by chance? What if one charm, one herb, one whispered prayer could hold death at bay for a single day longer? Would you not clutch it to your chest, whisper it in the dark, wear it beneath your shirt? Would you not reach for hope, even false hope, if it meant a moment's reprieve from the shadow that dogs your steps? And so, though you scoff, though you know better, sometimes you pick up small things as you work. A sprig of rosemary from a dead woman's hand, a tattered charm fallen from a corpse's pocket, a fragment of glass once sold as sapphire. You do not truly believe, but you carry them anyway, tucked into the folds of your clothing, because even you, who knows more of death than most, still feel the old human hunger for something to stand between you and the endless graves, the ranks thin around you. At first it is barely noticeable. Just one man absent from the cart-yard, his harness left dangling on a nail, his gloves stiff and curled with yesterday's filth. Someone mutters that he has a fever. Another shrugs and says he probably fled in the night. You hope for the second answer, though you know in your gut it is the first. He is gone either way, and the officials hardly blink. They only nod and divide his route among the rest of you, as though a man's whole life can be reduced to a list of streets to clear. The pattern repeats. Another disappears. Another coughs too long, then fails to return from his break. Another collapses mid-lift, dropping a bloated corpse back onto the cobblestones with a sickening thud. You're forced to help roll his still-breathing body into the cart, the same as the dead he once collected. His groans echo against the wood until they finally stop, and then silence. The next morning, no mention is made of him. The cart-yard feels smaller, emptier. One by one they vanish. Some are claimed by sickness, their skin darkening with the same swellings they hauled each day. Some simply vanish, abandoning wages, abandoning family, abandoning everything. Rumours drift through the ranks that a few have wandered into the countryside seeking villages untouched by plague. But the villagers shut gates, chase strangers with pitchforks, shout curses about pest bringers. Historians still argue whether these desperate wanderers spread the plague further or whether they were only scapegoats for a terror no one understood. Either way, their faces never return to your side of the cart. And then there are those claimed by rage. You hear about a collector dragged into an alley, beaten until his skull split open, his mask torn from his face. The townsfolk blamed him for carrying death into their quarter. They said his gloves were cursed, his cart a vessel of evil. You want to laugh at the absurdity, but the laughter sticks in your throat. It is not so different from what you do after all. You carry death wherever you wheel your cart. The mob left his body lying in the street unclaimed until, irony of ironies, another collector had to scoop him up and throw him into the pit. It becomes impossible not to count. Each morning you scan the yard, tallying the faces left. Jory, the heavy-shouldered joker, gone. Finn, who hummed tavern songs to drown the silence, gone. Martin, who swore every day was his last but somehow kept coming back, until he didn't, gone. With every absence you feel a knot tighten in your chest. You tell yourself not to dwell on it, but the human mind is a cruel accountant. It remembers every subtraction. The officials, though, show no sorrow. They measure men by utility. If one breaks, another is pressed into service. Apprentices, paupers, even prisoners are handed gloves and ropes, told they will earn their keep by collecting the dead. You see fear in their eyes, the same fear you once wore, and you know they will not last long. The ranks are not reinforced so much as recycled, like rotten boards patched over with green wood that will soon rot in turn. And yet, despite the thinning numbers, the work grows heavier. The plague does not slow to match your shrinking ranks. Streets fill with more bodies than you can count. The carts grow heavier. The wheels creak louder. The stench grows thicker. You push until your shoulders ache, until blisters crack open and bleed. You tell yourself you will outlast the rest. You tell yourself you are chosen. But in the dark of night, lying on your straw pallet, you wonder if you are only delaying the inevitable. Sometimes you dream of them, the vanished ones. They come to you not in terror, but in silence. You see Jory still carrying his staff, Finn still humming, Martin still swearing. They walk beside you down moonlit alleys, their carts rattling behind them, their faces pale but watchful. They do not speak, but you know what they are telling you. You will join us soon. You wake with sweat soaking your tunic, the stink of plague corpses still in your nostrils. One quirky tidbit you overheard once returns to haunt you. Some whispered that cats and dogs, even pigeons, were culled in certain quarters, accused of spreading disease. Historians still argue whether killing animals helped or worsened the spread. But you wonder if it mattered at all. Every living thing, man or beast, seemed destined to vanish. Perhaps soon there will be no voices left but the buzzing of flies. You begin to notice how solitude creeps closer. The fellowship you clung to, the rough jokes, the shared crusts of bread, the weary nods of men who understood the same filth, erodes with each absence. One morning you realize you no longer wait to hear anyone's voice. You simply push your cart, alone, the wheels marking time. Even the sound of laughter once echoing through alleys has faded to memory, and then the realization strikes you. You will be the last to walk these streets, the last to call for bodies no one dares answer, the last to tip corpses into a pit wide as a lake. That thought terrifies you more than the plague itself. It is not death that chills you now, but the prospect of being the sole shadow trudging through an abandoned city, calling for the dead when no living remain to hear. You whisper a mantra under your breath, half prayer, half curse. Not me, not yet, not today. Each repetition steadies your grip on the cart handles. You roll forward into streets lined with shuttered windows, past doors marked with chalk, past alleys where your companions once walked. Every creak of the wheels reminds you, you're still here, still walking. The others have vanished, but you endure. For now. The church bells ring less often now. At first their toll seemed constant, a mournful rhythm that marked each passing soul. But with so many dead, the sound has dulled into something else. An occasional groan, a half-hearted chime, as if even the bells are exhausted. Still, the clergy keep their presence known. When you trudge past the cathedral square, mask damp with sweat, you see them preaching to ragged crowds. Their words drift across the cobblestones. God's wrath, God's punishment, God's cleansing fire. Each phrase cuts the air like a lash. The sermons grow sharper as the months drag on. They thunder that the plague is a trial, that sin festers in the city's heart. Who bears the brunt of these accusations? You and men like you, the corpse collectors, the hands that touch the dead, the carts that wheel pestilence through the alleys. Some priests point at your masks and staffs, calling them marks of the damned. Others preach that handling the bodies is necessary but spiritually poisonous. It does not matter which version they choose, the outcome is the same. Eyes in the crowd turn toward you, hard and hostile, as though you alone carry God's fury in your gloves. One day, after you empty your cart into the pit, you linger at the edge of the square. A friar paces on a wooden platform, his robes fluttering like tattered sails. He shouts that the plague is proof of man's corruption, that collectors like you defile the sacred order by treating souls like refuse. He says each body should be buried with care, prayers, ritual. But who, you wonder bitterly, will shovel thousands of graves? Who will whisper thousands of prayers until tongues dry and throats bleed? You want to shout that you, at least, are doing the work no one else dares. But your voice would vanish beneath the jeers. Instead, you lower your head and move on. This sermon follows you, phrases echoing in your skull. Unholy, damned, cursed. Soon even strangers spit in the street as you pass. Some cross themselves, not out of pity, but as if to shield their souls from yours. Yet the clergy are not entirely united in hatred. A few priests seek you out, whispering confessions over the bodies you haul, sprinkling holy water as though droplets could drown the pestilence. They mutter blessings for you too, quiet prayers that your soul not rot with your work. Once, a young novice offers you a small wooden cross, pressing it into your palm. His hands tremble as he does so. You wear it for a time, tucked beneath your tunic, until it splinters against the cart's handle. You do not replace it. Rumours swirl that monasteries are emptying. Some monks lock themselves away, chanting day and night until starvation carries them off. Others flee, seeking wilderness or distant villages. The paradox stings. Those meant to shepherd the flock abandon their posts, while you, the shunned, the cursed, remain, shouldering the heaviest burden. And still, superstition blooms like mould in the damp. Some townsfolk whisper that you and your fellows are in league with the devil. Others claim the plague is spread not by rats or air, but by the touch of your gloved hands. Once, a mother blocks your path, screaming that her child died because your cart rolled past her door. Her wails draw a crowd, and for a breathless moment you fear they will drag you down, like the stories of mobs elsewhere. But the officials intervene, barking orders, shoving back the crowd with halberds. You escape, but the mother's voice lingers, shrill in your ears long after the cart rattles away. At night, you try to sort through it all. Are you damned, as the priests suggest? Are you holy, performing a grim sacrament? Or are you nothing, merely a mule dragging the weight of other people's terror? The boundaries blur. When you close your eyes, you see both angels and demons perched on the pits, watching the heaps of bodies with equal hunger. You start noticing how faith mutates under pressure. People wear charms made of bones, hang dried herbs in doorways, mutter chants half Christian, half pagan. A man sells protective potions made of crushed emeralds and vinegar, charging a fortune for each vial. You know it is nonsense, yet part of you envies those who believe. At least they have a talisman to cling to. You have only your rope, your gloves, your cart. On one bleak morning, a procession crosses your path. Hooded penitents, bare feet bleeding on the stones, whip themselves with cords until their backs run red. They chant psalms as they march, crying that their suffering will appease God's anger. Some collapse in the street, sobbing. The officials glare but do not intervene. You watch them disappear down the avenue, and you cannot decide if they are mad or simply honest in their despair. In time, you find yourself drawn to the sermons despite the venom. The words echo your own fears, that there is meaning in this horror, that it is not random, that perhaps all your toil serves some cosmic balance. You want to believe that piling bodies into pits is not just labour, but a dark liturgy. Yet the doubt never leaves. Each corpse dumped without a prayer weighs on you. Each jeer from the crowd reminds you that, in the eyes of many, you're not a saviour but a contaminant. When you finally sleep, your dreams twist with scripture and rot. You see a cathedral rising from bones instead of stone, its bells made of skulls, its priests clothed in funeral shrouds. And there you stand at the altar, not as worshipper, but as priest, lifting your shovel like a chalice. The congregation chants not hymns, but screams. You wake choking, unsure whether you've been cursed or consecrated. Still, the next day you put on your mask, take up your staff and return to the streets. Whatever the priests say, whatever the mobs believe, the bodies must be carried, and you are still here to carry them, The streets feel emptier, though not because the dead have stopped coming. If anything, there are more bodies now than ever before, but the living retreat deeper into their homes, shutters nailed, doors barred, refusing even to look through cracks as your cart rattles past. Silence lingers where once there was begging, cursing, pleading. You begin to feel that the only company left to you is the dead themselves, and so you start speaking to them. At first, it is a whisper under your mask, an apology as you lift another limp body onto the cart, a muttered word of comfort as you arrange the limbs so they will not tangle grotesquely. Later, the whispers grow louder, more constant, until you find yourself carrying on whole conversations. You won't be alone, you tell a child's corpse. You'll have company soon. To a gaunt old man whose jaw hangs slack, you say, "At least you'll rest now. The hunger's over." You do not know if these murmurs are prayers or simply attempts to hold your sanity together with frayed twine. Your fellow collectors notice. One night, while dragging your cart toward the pit, a man snorts at you. You talk to them like they answer back. You shrug, unwilling to explain that sometimes, in the rustle of their shrouds or the creak of your cartwheels, you almost do hear answers. They sound like sighs, like distant laughter, like whispers too faint to catch. And once, when exhaustion blurs your vision, you swear a corpse turned its head, lips curving into a smile meant only for you. Madness, you tell yourself, but madness is survival. Joking becomes another shield. Around the pits, while the moonlight glimmers on heaps of pale flesh, the collectors trade grim humour. Someone tosses a body into the trench and says, "Make room, he's late to supper." Another mutters that the dead keep better company than wives, less nagging, more obedient. Laughter erupts, harsh, brittle, but real. The jokes rot in your throat, yet you laugh anyway. If you don't, the silence might crush you. The rats, at least, are reliable companions. They scurry beside you, bold enough now to clamber onto the cart itself, snatching at loose scraps. Sometimes you let them. Watching their quick little jaws gnaw a hand or ear no longer horrifies you. It entertains. You nickname them, point out favourites to your comrades, as though they were household pets. That one's Blacktail. He always gets the choicest morsels. They laugh, though none of you truly find it funny. Sleep becomes treacherous. When you close your eyes, the boundary between waking and dreaming frays. The corpses from your cart gather around you, speaking in familiar voices. They ask why you did not pray for them, why you threw them into the pit without ceremony, why you survived when they did not. You answer them as best you can, muttering excuses that fade into sobs. Sometimes you wake with your hands clenched as though gripping their shoulders, shaking them back to life. Other nights bring stranger visions. You see yourself lying among the corpses, your mask still tied, your hands stiff and clawed. You see rats scurrying over your chest, slipping into your open mouth. You see the other collectors tossing you into the trench without a pause, one more body to be stacked and forgotten. You wake drenched in sweat, gasping, clawing at your throat to be sure it's not true. And yet, when morning comes, you put the mask back on, as though inviting the dream to step closer to reality. Sometimes you wonder if the plague is not only a sickness of the body but of the mind. The city reeks of fever and despair, and those fumes seep into you no less than the stench of the corpses. How else to explain that you feel safer with the dead than the living? The living hate you, fear you, shun you. The dead make no demands. They never curse you, never spit, never pray for your damnation. They accept your presence without question. And so, increasingly, You choose their company. After unloading your cart into the pit, you linger. You sit on the mound of earth nearby, humming tunelessly, staring at the pale heap until the sun dips low. You tell stories to the corpses, memories of when you were a child, when bread was fresh and bells meant weddings instead of funerals. You confess secrets, things you've never told another living soul. The bodies never answer, but in their silence you find comfort. Your comrades change too. Some vanish overnight, claimed by sickness or mobs. Others remain, but wear the same hollow look you know is etched on your own face. A few mutter constantly, as if rehearsing prayers or curses. One man carves tally marks into his arm each day, blood crusting over in a ladder of scars. You do not ask what he is counting, days alive, bodies carried, or sins committed. None of you are in a position to question each other's coping. You begin to forget what laughter from ordinary life sounds like. Not the brittle jokes of collectors, not the jeers of the crowd, but true laughter. Sometimes you try to recall it, squeezing your eyes shut until tears slip free, but the sound won't come. In its place you hear only the squeal of cart wheels, the gnawing of rats, the toll of distant bells, and beneath it all, a steady whisper, the voice of the plague itself. It doesn't speak in words, but in sensations. The prickle on your skin when you brush against a corpse, the weight in your chest when another door slams shut as you pass, the ache in your bones when you wonder how much longer you can endure. The whisper says only one thing, soon, but you ignore it. You grip your staff tighter, shove the cart forward, and talk to your passengers again. Not yet, you tell them softly. I've got more work to do before I join you. Orders arrive not as polite requests, but as barked decrees, carried by men who would never touch a corpse themselves. They stand apart from you, fine gloves on their hands, silk kerchiefs at their noses, voices muffled by layers of scented cloth. Yet their words cut as sharply as whips. Collect more. Move faster. Keep the streets clear. You bow your head, pretending obedience though inside you seethe. They do not understand what they ask. To them, the dead are numbers in a tally, problems to be erased before panic spreads. To you, they are heavy, rotting bodies, each one a weight both physical and spiritual. Every week the quotas rise. The magistrates count too many complaints of corpses left in alleys, too many tales of dogs chewing human remains, too many whispers that the collectors are slacking, so you are driven harder. At dawn, you are ordered to clear a street before the market opens. By nightfall, you're told to finish before the bells toll curfew. There is no rest between. The wheel ruts of your cart deepen in the cobblestones. Your shoulders ache with the endless rhythm of heaving, dragging, lifting. Worse are the secrecy commands. Do not speak of what you see, the officials hiss. Do not tell anyone the numbers. Do not admit how many pits are filled. They fear that truth is more dangerous than plague, that words will spread faster than fleas. So you learn to hold your tongue, swallowing the urge to describe the heaps of bodies, the nights when one pit fills so quickly another must be dug before morning. Even if you wanted to confess, to share the burden with a neighbour or priest, who would listen? Your voice is silenced not only by orders but by disgust. No one wants a corpse collector's stories, yet the authorities use you as both servant and scapegoat. When a street overflows with rot, it is your fault for being too slow. When people riot against burial pits, the magistrates send you first into the crowd, your stinking clothes meant to scatter them. If you are beaten, no one cares. You chose this work, they remind you, as if choice had ever been real. as if hunger and desperation had not shackled you tighter than chains. The city watch hovers over you, watching for signs of disobedience. Once you paused too long by a door where a mother wept for her child, refusing to hand the body over. You wanted to comfort her, to promise you would place the child gently. But the guard struck you with the butt of his spear, snarling that delays meant contagion. Blood dripped into your eye as you lifted the corpse, and the mother's scream still haunts your dreams. The guard did not care. To him, you were as low as the rats you followed. Payment grows irregular. Sometimes wages arrive in copper coins weeks late, sometimes not at all. The officials claim shortages, but you know better. Money vanishes into their pockets even as you starve. A few collectors, desperate, steal from the dead, rings pried from fingers, purses tucked into shrouds. You do not condemn them. Hunger gnaws sharper than guilt. Yet if caught, the punishment is brutal. Hands chopped off, bodies strung in public squares as warnings. The authorities cannot risk people believing you profit from plague. Better to remind the crowd that you are expendable. Punishments are not only for theft. Rumours tell of collectors who dared speak against their masters, whispering that the city buries its poor while the rich bribe their way into private tombs. Those men vanish. Perhaps they rot in dungeons. Perhaps they join the heaps they once carried. Either way, their absence is noted only by you and your fellows, never by officials. Silence becomes your armour, heavier than your mask. Still, some orders cannot be obeyed without cost. One night the bailiff demands that you empty an entire ward before dawn. The plague has torn through it like fire through dry timber, and every house contains bodies. You and your comrades stagger under the weight, dragging one corpse after another, the cart overflowing. By sunrise the street is clear, but your limbs tremble, your lungs wheeze, and two men collapse where they stand. The bailiff curses them for weakness and commands the rest of you to continue. No thanks, no mercy, only commands. You begin to see the truth. The authorities fear you as much as they need you. To them, you are a necessary evil, a tool best kept at arm's length. They issue their demands through intermediaries, rarely approaching directly, as though your very presence might poison them. Their eyes dart when you stand near, their lips tighten when you breathe too close. They use you to keep their city livable, yet they pray you vanish once your purpose is served. And still, you obey. What choice exists? To refuse is to starve, to be beaten, to join the dead. So you bow, you nod, you grip your staff tighter, and you carry their burdens. But inside, resentment coils. One day, you tell yourself, the pits will not only swallow the poor and forgotten. One day, the earth will open its mouth for the magistrates too, and then who will haul their jewelled corpses? Perhaps you will take pleasure in that task. Until then, you endure. You shuffle down streets with your cart, whispering to the dead because they are kinder than the living. You bow to orders because survival demands it. You bury bodies in silence because truth is forbidden. The authorities may believe they hold power, but in the quiet hours, as you stand beside a pit filled to its brim, you realize something unsettling. You have touched more death than they ever will, and death has begun to recognize you. You start to wonder if you're still human. It is not a sudden thought, not something that explodes into your mind like fire, but rather a slow creep, a steady erosion. Each day strips something from you. The smell of lavender soap you once cherished, the sound of laughter in taverns, the feel of warm bread between your hands. What replaces them is different. Stench embedded in your skin, cries echoing in your skull, coarse crusts of stale food swallowed in silence. A person cannot live like this without changing, and you fear what you have become. At first, you try to keep track of the days. You scratch small lines into a scrap of wood kept in your pocket, one notch for every sunrise you endured. But then the work blurred. Night and day melted together. Seasons passed without clear edges, and the wood filled too quickly. When you lost it on a burial run, you did not bother to carve another. Time had stopped mattering. Your world shrank to one rhythm: lift, drag, haul, bury. The beat of death against your body, relentless as a drum. When you catch your reflection, rarely in a bucket of rainwater or the dull shine of a window, you barely recognize the hollowed eyes staring back. Your face is gaunt, cheekbones sharp, lips cracked. A permanent smear of grime and blood clings no matter how you scrub. You used to know your own features. Now you look like a mask of someone else, a stranger who stares without expression. Perhaps this is fitting, for collectors are no longer seen as men or women. You are shadows moving through the streets, nameless, faceless, as feared as the plague itself. The children's whispers confirm it. Once they pointed and called you by your name, half mocking, half curious. Now they give you new titles: Ghoul, Eater of Death, Shadow Man. Some pelt you with stones, screaming that you bring disease. Others run indoors when you pass, convinced your very shadow carries infection. Even mothers pull their children away, as though you are a wolf roaming their street. Slowly, the names carve themselves into your mind, deeper than any official decree. You're not just a collector now. You're something less, or perhaps something other. Nights are the worst. In silence, when the cart rests in the shed and your body aches on a straw mat, the dreams begin. Sometimes you see faces of the dead, eyes open, lips moving as though whispering your name. Sometimes you feel their hands gripping your arms, cold and wet, dragging you down into the pit with them. Once you woke with dirt in your mouth, having bitten the mat so hard you tore its seams. You spit straw and blood trembling in the dark. You no longer trust sleep, yet exhaustion always wins. Your comrades fare no better. You see it in their eyes, the glassy stare, the twitch of lips when no words come, the hollow laughter at things not funny. One mutters prayers endlessly, even while hauling corpses. Another keeps a piece of bone tucked in his pouch, rubbing it for luck as though it were a holy relic. A third began to speak to the rats, calling them by names, scattering crumbs from his pocket so they would follow his cart. Perhaps madness is the only shield left, a thin curtain against despair. You feel it tugging at you too, whispering that the line between collector and collected is thinner than you admit. Food tastes of nothing now. Bread, beans, dried fish. Each mouthful might as well be ash. Water is tinged with the iron of rusting barrels, and sometimes you wonder if it carries the plague too. Yet you swallow it, because survival is a habit you cannot shake. You tell yourself each bite keeps you alive, but part of you asks, alive for what? To drag more corpses tomorrow, to hear more screams, to watch more children orphaned? The answer never comes. There are moments when you feel yourself slipping closer to the edge. Once, while heaving a swollen body onto your cart, you felt an urge, not to drop it into the pit, but to climb in beside it, to lie down among the stillness, to surrender to the quiet that has eluded you for so long. Your hands trembled as you gripped the cart's handle, forcing yourself away, sweat freezing on your back. Another time you stood at the cliff of the burial pit, staring into its depth, and thought, if I fall, no one will care. They will bury me where I land. my work will end. The thought was not fearsome, it was relief, yet some stubborn ember keeps you moving. Perhaps it is the same ember that kept you alive when hunger first forced you to take this job. Perhaps it is habit, muscle memory, or the faintest scrap of will. But it flickers, weak and pale, sometimes nearly smothered. You guard it because it is all you have left, the only proof that some human still beats inside this hollow shell. You cling to fragments of what once mattered. The memory of your mother's voice singing, the warmth of summer sun before the plague swept the skies grey, the laughter of a friend long buried. These flashes pierce the gloom like sparks, but they hurt as much as they heal. They remind you of who you were and of how far you have fallen. You hold them anyway, because without them you fear you would dissolve entirely. Sometimes you imagine what the city will look like when this ends, if it ends. You picture streets scrubbed clean, markets alive again, bells ringing for weddings instead of burials. Yet when you try to place yourself in that vision, you cannot. Where would a corpse collector belong in a city reborn? Who would welcome you back, shake your hand, sit beside you at a table? No one. You have crossed into a place from which there is no return. Even if the plague dies, you will still carry its ghost inside you. The edge draws closer each day. You feel it in your bones, in the hollow of your chest, in the way your heart no longer startles at screams or collapses. You wonder if one morning you will simply stop rising, stop lifting, stop obeying. Not out of choice, but because the part of you that is human finally collapses. When that happens, will anyone notice? Or will they drag you to the pit without ceremony, just another body among thousands? You try not to answer. You push the thought away, grip the cart's handle and keep walking. But deep inside you know the truth. You are not nearing the edge. You've already crossed it. And whatever walks these streets in your skin is not the person you once were, but something forged in the endless company of death. The city has grown quieter, though not because the plague has relented. The truth is simpler. There are fewer left to suffer. Whole streets now lie deserted, shutters nailed closed, doors chained, windows boarded from within. When you pass through, your cart rattling over stones, only echoes greet you. Sometimes you glimpse a shape behind a slit in the wood, a pale eye, a shadow moving back from the light. But the people rarely emerge. It feels like walking through a graveyard where the tombs still breathe. Your cart is lighter these days, not because death has lessened, but because most have already been taken. The pits outside the walls gape wider than ever, yet the trips are fewer. When you drag the wheels through mud, you notice how empty the streets are, how even the rats seem thinner. Hunger gnaws not only at your stomach but at the whole city, and famine walks hand in hand with pestilence. The dead come slower now, but when they do, their bodies are wasted to bone and skin, as if life abandoned them long before the plague made its final claim. Tonight, you pause outside a ruined church. The bell has not rung in months, the door hangs crooked, the altar stripped bare, and yet you feel drawn to it. You tether the mule, lift your aching body down from the cart and step inside. The silence inside is heavier than the silence outside. Dust lies thick on the benches, and broken glass from the shattered windows crunches under your boots. This smell here is not of rot, but of emptiness, of abandonment, as if faith itself fled long ago. You sit on a bench, clutching your hands together, though you do not know if you pray. Words feel foreign in your mouth, but your heart whispers all the same. Why? Why me? Why them? Why anyone? No answer comes. only the creak of wood, the scuttle of a mouse. Yet in that stillness you feel a strange relief. For the first time in months no corpse lies waiting, no overseer shouts orders, no family wails in grief. There is only you and the hollow shell of a sanctuary. You could stay here forever, you think, but you know you will rise again. The cart waits, the dead always wait. When you leave, the sky has darkened as deep indigo. A thin mist curls along the alleys, clinging to doorways like ghostly fingers. You light your lantern, but its glow feels fragile, swallowed quickly by the gloom. As you guide the cart forward, you realize you're whispering aloud. Not prayers, not curses, but names. Names of those you once knew. Names of strangers whose faces you still remember. You recite them like a litany, though no one listens. Perhaps it is for yourself, so that the world does not erase them entirely. Each name steadies you, a reminder that though you bury bodies, you can still keep their memory alive a little longer. At the edge of the city, you reach the burial ground. The pit yawns wide before you, its sides crumbling under the weight of countless layers of death. You have tipped thousands here, yet each time the sight strikes you anew. The lantern's light dances across pale shapes piled in grotesque forms, limbs tangled, skulls turned upward, mouths open as if still gasping. A crow flutters from the edge, wings loud in the stillness. The stench rises, making your throat close, though you no longer gag as once you did. You're too used to it now. You climb onto the cart and haul down the body you carry tonight. It is lighter than most, a child swaddled in a blanket. For a moment your hands falter. You think of how small it feels, how weightless, as if the soul fled long before death came. You cannot help but look at the face, though you try not to. Eyes closed, lips pale, hair matted. You whisper an apology, though you know it changes nothing. Then, with a steady motion, you lower the bundle into the pit. It falls softly, landing among the others. The silence that follows is immense. No cry, no prayer, no farewell. Only the soft hiss of mist curling at the edges. You close your eyes and breathe slowly, feeling the ache of every muscle, the weariness in your bones. How many more nights like this will there be? 12? 100? You no longer measure time by days, but by pits filled, by bodies lowered. Yet something within you shifts tonight. Not a break, not despair, those you've long known, but a clarity, a simple truth that settles like cold iron. You are part of this earth of death now. Whether you rise tomorrow or fall into the pit yourself, it no longer matters. The line between the living and the dead has blurred too much to hold meaning. You turn away from the pit, grip the cart's handle and begin the walk back. Each step feels both endless and final. The lantern swings at your side, its light swaying like the last fragile flame of a dying candle. Behind you, the pit yawns wider, waiting. Ahead, the streets stretch silent, waiting too. And in your chest, the ember that once burned with resistance now glows faintly, neither strong nor extinguished, but steady. As you push forward, you wonder if someday history will remember you, not by name, but as a shadow, a figure who carried the dead when no one else would. Perhaps not. Perhaps the memory of collectors will rot away like the bodies you buried. Yet you know this. For all the fear, the stench, the loneliness, you did what the living required. You bore the weight that others refused. And though the city may never speak it aloud, some small corner of the world remains because of you. The thought is fragile, like glass, but you carry it with you as the mist thickens and the night deepens. Perhaps tomorrow you will rise again. Perhaps you will not. But for this final night's reflection, you let yourself believe there was purpose, however grim, in the life of a corpse collector. You thought the end of the plague would bring peace, or at least silence. The carts no longer roll through the streets at midnight. The tolling bells no longer clang in your ears, and the smell of burning lime and smoke has begun to fade from the alleys. Yet when you close your eyes, none of that matters. The corpses you carried, the hollow eyes staring upward from the pits, the shrieks of families torn apart, those remain. Sleep should have been your escape, but instead it has become another battlefield, one where you cannot control what comes for you. The nightmares arrive with cruel precision. You drift off, exhausted, your body aching from years of labour, only to find yourself standing at the edge of another pit. The stench rises hot and sour, and the ground beneath you seems to pulse like living flesh. You try to step back, but the soil gives way, dragging you downward. Arms reach up, thin, bony, blackened by plague, and they clutch at your legs, your wrists, your throat. No matter how hard you fight, you tumble into the heap, buried alive among the same bodies you once tried to move. The weight of them crushes you, their mouths gape open, their teeth scrape your skin. And just when you feel the air leave your lungs, you wake, gasping, clutching your chest in the darkness of your cot. But even when you wake, you're not free. The shadows of the room seem to crawl. You swear you can hear whispering, soft at first, then louder, the kind of whisper that worms into your ear until you feel it echoing inside your skull. They are not words you can understand, yet you know their meaning all the same. They are the voices of the dead, the ones you carried by the hundreds, perhaps thousands. They call for recognition, for vengeance, or simply for your company. And so you lie awake, drenched in sweat, staring at the ceiling until dawn creeps in pale and indifferent through the cracks. Your body pays the price for this endless war in your mind. By day you stumble, eyelids heavy, limbs sluggish. People notice your trembling hands, the way you startle at sudden noises. They whisper that the plague still lingers in you, that death clings to you like a shadow. You cannot tell them the truth, that it is not the disease but memory itself that infects you. And what cure is there for that? No herbal tea, no prayer beads, no whispered absolution can drive away the images stamped into your mind. Some nights the dreams change. Instead of pits, you find yourself back in the cramped alleys pushing your cart. But this time the bodies are not silent. They groan as you lift them, their eyes flickering open, accusing. One child, her hair matted, her lips blue, suddenly clutches your arm. You hear her voice, sharp as a blade. You should have saved me. Another dream shows you carrying your mother's body, though in truth she never succumbed to the plague. Still, in the dream, you lay her gently among strangers, and she turns her face toward you and asks why you abandoned her. These dreams confuse memory with invention until you no longer know what is real. There are nights when you dare not sleep at all. You sit by a candle, staring at the flame until your eyes burn, telling yourself you will not drift away. But eventually the weight of exhaustion pulls you under, and when the flame gutters out, darkness claims you again. It feels like the plague itself. No matter how you fight, no matter how much you resist, it will find a way inside you. The toll it takes on your mind grows heavier with each week. You begin to dread the setting sun. Others look forward to rest, to the warmth of bed, but you feel only cold fear. The thought of closing your eyes makes your heart race. You try to stay awake with tasks, mending your worn boots, scrubbing the table, even sweeping an already clean floor. Anything to keep your hands busy, anything to delay the moment when you must surrender to sleep. But in the end, the body always betrays the mind. Your head droops, your grip loosens, and once more you fall into the pit of your own memory. And what memories they are! You dream of the pits not as they were, but as they might have been if you had done things differently. You dream of leaving bodies uncollected, families forced to drag their own dead to the outskirts. You dream of refusing the job altogether and someone else taking your place, only to collapse, infected, before the first week is out. In these dreams, guilt doubles back on itself. Whether you acted or not, you feel responsible. Whether you saved someone or failed them, the outcome is the same. Sometimes the nightmares blur with waking life. In broad daylight you catch yourself nodding off as you sit against a wall, only to jolt awake at the sound of imagined crying. Once, while fetching water, you looked into the bucket and swore you saw a face staring back. Another time, walking past an alley, you were certain you smelled fresh death, though there were no bodies. Your mind, exhausted and fractured, plays tricks. But are they tricks or something else? Some nights you wonder if the souls of the dead truly linger, bound to you by the touch of your hands, the press of your cartwheels, the shovels of earth you poured upon them. Perhaps their restless spirits are what invade your dreams, demanding acknowledgement from the one who carried them last. You begin to understand why old men mutter about curses, why widows light candles for decades after a death. Perhaps grief is not something that fades, but something that stains, and you, who touched more grief than anyone else, are stained through and through. Your dreams are not random shadows of the mind. They are echoes of a river of death you walked through, a river that will never release you. What frightens you most is not the terror, but the familiarity. After a time, the nightmares become routine. You know the sequence, the pit, the reaching hands, the cries. You almost welcome them, as one welcomes old acquaintances. They remind you of who you are, what you did, and why you can never be free. To sleep without them would be stranger still, for it would mean forgetting, and forgetting feels like betrayal, and so you endure night after night carrying the plague into your dreams. Your body has survived the sickness, your mind has survived the horrors of the streets, but in sleep you are still the corpse collector, still knee-deep in the pits, still surrounded by death that will not rest. The scars you carry are invisible, carved not into skin but into the very fabric of your sleep. Long after the world has moved on, you remain trapped in those endless nights where the dead never let you go. You wake one morning and the silence is different. For months silence meant sickness, neighbours too weak to leave their homes, bells tolling softly in the distance, shutters locked against contagion. But this silence is heavier, emptier. You step into the street and realise there are no carts, no priests muttering prayers, no cries for help drifting through the alleys. The plague has burned itself out, leaving behind not triumph, but absence. Your city, once crowded, loud, alive, now lies like a carcass. Whole rows of houses stand deserted, shutters broken, doors swinging in the wind. You remember who lived in some of them. The tailor with his quick fingers and quicker temper, the widow who used to sell pies near the square, the children who played chase with wooden hoops, all gone. Their homes stand as monuments to absence, and you walk past them like a ghost among ghosts. You make your way toward the marketplace, but there is no market anymore. Stalls that once overflowed with fish, bread and herbs are nothing but empty frames. A few broken baskets lie scattered on the ground, gnawed by rats. The fountain in the square, where women used to draw water and gossip, is cracked and dry. Once this place smelled of roasted meat and fresh bread. Now it smells of dust and rot. The plague was not a storm that passed and left life untouched. It was a fire that devoured the roots. The butchers are gone, the baker's gone, the smith's gone. Without them, nothing functions. Trade has collapsed. Foreign merchants, once eager to bring goods along the river, now steer clear, afraid the sickness still lingers in your walls. The city that prided itself on wealth and craft is reduced to scraps. You remember the sound of church bells tolling endlessly through the worst months. Now you enter the cathedral square and find the great doors shut, the iron lock rusting. Many priests fled when the sickness raged hottest. Others fell to it themselves. Those who remain are few, their voices hoarse from chanting prayers over endless graves. You hear whispers that faith itself has crumbled. People wonder aloud if the plague was God's punishment, or if God abandoned them altogether. You see men who once knelt at every mass now mutter curses when they pass the church walls. And though you still bow your head instinctively at the sight of the cross, you cannot help but wonder too. As you walk the ruined streets, memories press against you like unseen hands. Here was where you loaded your cart each morning, stacking corpses like firewood. There was the alley where a mother begged you to spare her son, though his breath was already gone. You recognize stains on the cobblestones, faint dark patches that will never wash away. No matter how much rain falls, the city seems dyed in death. Yet what unsettles you most is the absence of people. At dusk you count only a handful of figures crossing the square. Once you could barely move through the crowd. Now the emptiness makes every step echo. The city feels too big, too hollow, like a bell whose sound has died. Survivors move with caution, as though expecting shadows to leap at them. Even laughter, when you hear it, sounds wrong. Too sharp, too desperate, like people trying to remind themselves what it means to be human. You think of the children most. The streets used to ring with their shouts. Now weeks can pass without you seeing a single one. Families were the hardest hit, whole lines wiped out. The plague showed no mercy for age or strength, and so you walk through lanes that once burst with life, where children played at knights and merchants, and you see only dust swirling in the wind. It feels as though the future itself has been stolen. One afternoon you wander toward the river docks where trade once flourished. The wharves lie half collapsed, ships tied loosely or rotting where they sit. Ropes sway in the breeze, slapping wood that no longer bears cargo. The taverns nearby are shuttered. You remember their noise, the laughter, the songs, the smell of spilled ale. Now they are quiet tombs of memory. Rats scurry across the planks, bold as kings. Everywhere you turn, you see proof that the plague was not only a sickness of the body, but of the spirit. Neighbours no longer trust one another. People glance with suspicion at coughs, step back from strangers, and avoid touching hands. You, who once carried the dead, feel their stares most of all. You are necessary, but you're also a reminder. They cannot look at you without recalling the pits, the corpses, the smell of decay. To them, you're not a man but an emblem of horror. And so the ruined city isolates you further. You survived, but survival is its own kind of exile. The ruin is not only in stone and trade, but in time itself. Days blend together, indistinct. With no bells, no bustling markets, no festivals, there's nothing to mark the turning of weeks. Even the seasons feel dulled, as though the city itself has forgotten how to celebrate the harvest or prepare for winter. You wonder if joy will ever return, or if the city will sink forever into this half-dead state. At times, you imagine leaving, seeking another place less haunted. But when you picture yourself stepping beyond the gates, you feel heavy, as though chains bind you to these streets. You spent years among the dead here, your sweat and strength buried with them. You know the city's grief as intimately as your own. To leave would be to abandon them all over again. And so you stay, walking the hollow avenues, remembering what once was and wondering what could ever rise from the ruin. The ruined city is a reflection of you, scarred, emptied, changed beyond recognition. And just as no one can scrub away the stains on the cobbles, no one can cleanse the memories carved into you. The plague has ended, but the ruin remains, vast and unyielding. Every step you take through these deserted streets reminds you that some wounds never heal. They only linger, waiting for the day when silence grows heavier than sound. The nights are the worst. By day, you can walk the ruined streets, lose yourself in silence, pretend that life might return. But when darkness falls and the city grows still, your mind betrays you. You lie on your pallet, staring at the ceiling beams, and the faces of the dead gather above you like constellations. Some are strangers, eyes glazed and mouths open. Others you knew, neighbours, children, friends. Their voices whisper, accusing and tender all at once. Why you? Why not me? You lived. That truth should bring relief. Instead, it presses on your chest like a stone. Every memory of the pits, every body you lifted, every name you forgot in the press of duty, returns as a ghost. You did not kill them, yet you were there, and in being there, you cannot escape the weight of their absence. Survivor's guilt. You do not have the words for it, but you feel it in your marrow. You remember moments when you thought you would die too. Fever raged through the city, corpses piled higher than wagons, and you breathed the same air as them all. Each cough made you certain your end had come, and yet the sickness passed over you. You rose each morning strong enough to haul another day's worth of dead. Why were you spared? Some whisper it is luck, others that corpse collectors were already half dead from stench and despair, and so the plague found no purchase in you. You do not know. All you know is that you stand in a world emptied, carrying a burden that no priest can absolve. When you walk through what remains of the city, people glance away. Some avoid you because you remind them of death. Others whisper that perhaps you were spared because you consorted with it, that touching so many corpses tainted you in ways unseen. You feel their eyes like knives in your back. The truth is simpler. You survived by chance. Yet even chance feels like theft when so many others lost everything. Your guilt grows heaviest when you remember the choices you made. There were times when carts overflowed and you left some bodies behind to fetch later. By the time you returned, rats had already chewed them, or the family had fled in desperation, leaving their dead unburied. You remember the cries of those begging you to take their loved ones first, to spare them another hour of watching rot claim the body. You did what you could, but there was never enough of you to meet their pleas. Now those memories gnaw at you like rats in the walls. Did you fail them? Did your strength, your survival, come at their cost? Dreams plague you too. You see yourself standing by the pits, tossing body after body into the earth, but then the faces twist into those of people you loved. A friend's hand dangles limp from the cart. Your mother's shawl covers a corpse you never recognized. You wake drenched in sweat, your breath ragged, and for a long time you cannot tell if you're still dreaming. Each morning you rise heavier, more haunted, as though the city itself feeds on your torment. Some nights you walk the streets to escape sleep. Moonlight spills over deserted alleys, and you imagine the dead walking beside you, quiet and endless. They do not frighten you. What frightens you is how natural it feels, as if you belong more with them than with the living. You survived, yes, but what kind of life is it, when your closest companions are memories of the lost? The church offers no comfort. You tried, once, to sit in the pews, listening as a weary priest mumbled words of salvation, but every phrase about God's mercy stung. Mercy? Where was mercy in the pits? Where was mercy when children coughed their last into your arms? You could not kneel without feeling rage. You could not pray without tasting ash. And so you stopped going, though sometimes you still find yourself staring at the cathedral spire, wondering if faith might one day return, if not to you, then to someone. Survivor's guilt changes how you see others. When you pass a woman selling meagre loaves, you think of all the bakers who once crowded the market. When you see a man hammering at bent iron, you think of the smith who died early in the plague, leaving his forge cold. Every survivor you encounter reminds you of someone missing, and instead of joy at their survival, you feel a sting of grief for the absences they highlight. Even friendship tastes bitter, flavoured with loss. There are days when you try to reason with yourself. I lived because someone had to. Someone had to bury them. Someone had to survive to tell what happened. You repeat this like a prayer, but the words never take root. At best, they bring you a moment's peace before the next memory rises. Another child's empty eyes, another alley filled with silence. Guilt is not rational. It does not listen to reason. It feeds on memory and multiplies. You notice changes in your body too. Your back aches more than before. Your hands tremble when you try to lift heavy loads. You survived, but survival has carved you hollow. You wonder if the years you gained will be worth the weight you carry. Sometimes you envy the dead, not because you wish for death itself, but because their suffering is finished. Yours lingers on, invisible yet unrelenting. One evening, as you sit by the empty fountain in the square, a child approaches. Thin, wide-eyed, she holds a crust of bread in her hands. She stares at you without fear, though her parents surely told her what you were. Finally she asks, "Did you really touch them all?" You nod, unable to speak. She studies you, then says simply, "Then they're not forgotten." Before you can reply, she runs off into the shadows. Her words echo long after. Perhaps that is the only redemption survivors like you can claim, that the dead are remembered, that their passing was not in vain because someone lived to carry their memory. It does not erase the guilt, but it gives it shape, a purpose, a reason to keep walking. You cannot undo the plague, cannot bring back those lost, but you can remember them, and in remembering, keep them from vanishing completely. The weight of survivor's guilt does not lift. It becomes part of you, a second skin, a burden you will carry to your grave. But perhaps, just perhaps, it is also the proof that you still care, that you remain human in a city half turned to stone. You lived, and though that truth cuts like a knife, it also binds you to the memory of all who did not. And in a world stripped of meaning, memory might be the only gift left. The city has grown quieter, but quiet is not peace. It is the hush of a wound that has scabbed but not healed. In the markets, such as they are now, you hear it first. A merchant leans across a rickety stall, his eyes darting to make sure no one listens too closely, and whispers to a customer that he has heard of sickness returning in the southern villages. Another woman, clutching herbs in her apron, mutters that she saw a neighbour with dark swellings beneath the skin. No one speaks too loudly, as though naming it will summon it back. Yet the word travels faster than any cart or horse. Plague. You recognise the tone in their voices. Fear sharpens it, makes every whisper a blade. Even those who survive the great dying cannot endure the thought of it returning. The memory is too fresh, the graves too shallow. And so, when the rumours spread, the whole city seems to tremble like a beast beneath a whip. Shops that had just begun to open again shutter their doors. Bells toll for the dead, though often the bodies inside the coffins are claimed by fever, not plague. The distinction hardly matters. Fear does not care for details. For you, the rumours carry a special weight. The people look at you differently now. Once you were the one who touched the dead, who braved the contagion no one else dared to face. But instead of gratitude, many cast suspicion your way. He will know before any of us, they murmur. He has the smell of the pit still clinging to him. Children stare at you as though you carry the sickness on your breath. Even friends grow cautious, stepping back when you draw near, asking too casually if you've seen anything unusual. You feel the distance widen with every rumour until you walk through the streets as if wrapped in smoke, half visible, half despised. The truth is, you too fear it. You wake each morning with your body tense, waiting for the first sign, a cough that will not stop, a swell beneath your arm, the fever's burn. You watch others with suspicion, as though every sneeze might herald catastrophe. The fear is not only of death, but of repetition. You survived once. Could you endure the pits again? Could you carry another mountain of corpses, or would this time break you for good? Whispers of returning plague change the city's rhythm. At wells, people draw water quickly and leave, avoiding conversation. In the bakeries, loaves are snatched with coins tossed rather than placed into palms. Families retreat indoors, smoke curling from chimneys even in warm weather, as though fire itself could guard them. Priests march the streets with relics held high, chanting prayers of protection, their voices hoarse yet insistent. For a moment it feels as though the city has slipped back in time, returned to the worst months of dread. The line between rumour and reality blurs until no one can tell if the plague is truly back, or if fear itself is the sickness spreading fastest. Your own nights grow restless. You remember too vividly the first wave, the carts rattling over cobblestones, the moans of the dying, the air so thick with decay it felt like drinking rot. When you close your eyes, you hear again the coughs, the cries, the thud of bodies falling into pits. The possibility of its return scratches at your nerves until you wake drenched in sweat, convinced you smell the stench rising once more. You press your face into your sleeve, breathing deeply, trying to remind yourself that it is only memory. But memory is a cruel master, and it convinces you of things not yet true. Some survivors cling to hope, insisting the rumours are false. The sickness has burned itself out, they say. It cannot return. God would not allow it twice. But hope is fragile and fear outweighs it. When a man dies suddenly in the next district, people do not wait for a physician's judgment. They say plague, certain as if they had seen the black buboes with their own eyes. When 3 children vanish from school, their absence is explained not by hunger or travel, but by the disease's shadow. Every misfortune becomes a symptom, every shadow a warning. You cannot escape the talk. Even when you try to avoid the markets and squares, voices drift to you on the wind. Sometimes neighbours seek you out directly. You were among them, they say. You would know. Tell us the truth. Has it returned? Their eyes bore into you, desperate for reassurance. But what truth can you give? You cannot promise safety. You cannot swear the pits will stay closed. You shake your head, muttering that you have seen no signs. Still, they look unconvinced, as though your very survival brands you as a liar. There are moments when you think the rumours themselves might call the plague back. Fear is a contagion, after all, and the city coughs it out day by day. You see it in the way neighbours stop sharing bread, in the way doors close tighter, in the way trust crumbles like mortar from old walls. The plague does not need to return. The city is already sick with dread, and yet, part of you knows that rumours often begin with truth. The pestilence was never confined to one city alone. It wandered the land like a wolf, striking where it wished, vanishing, then returning. You remember travellers' tales of whole villages gone silent, of ships found adrift with no living soul aboard. If it stalks the countryside again, what is to stop it from returning here? The thought coils around your gut like a snake. You survived once, but the dice may not fall in your favour twice. One evening, as you walk past the graveyard, you see fresh earth turned. A small pit, hastily dug, holds 3 bodies wrapped in cloth. No one waits beside them, no priest has spoken over them, only the crows bear witness. The sight stops you cold. You stare at the pit, heart hammering. Were these 3 victims of plague, or only the ordinary cruelties of hunger and fever? The distinction no longer matters. To the city, they are proof. Proof that death has returned. Proof that the rumours breathe with lungs of their own. That night, bells toll once more. The sound rolls over rooftops, low and mournful, stirring memories of endless funerals. You close your eyes, and for a moment you cannot tell if it is the present or the past. The line blurs, and you wonder if perhaps you never left the plague at all, if it has been waiting all along, crouched in the silence, ready to rise again the moment people dared to hope. The rumours grow stronger with each toll of the bell. Whether true or false, they reshape the city, twisting every glance, every cough, every silence into a harbinger. And you, corpse collector, stand once more on the edge of dread, unsure if you're preparing for another descent into hell, or if hell has never truly let you go. The whispers of plague are heavy enough, but hunger has a way of grinding fear into bone. Disease you dread, famine you feel in your stomach every hour of every day. At first it is small things you notice. Bread a little thinner, bowls of stew with more water than meat. Then one morning you pass a baker's stall and find no loaves at all, only the blackened crust swept into the gutter for rats. Hunger, like the plague, does not announce itself with fanfare. It creeps, gnaws, and then one day you wake and realise it has already claimed you. The sickness had emptied fields as well as homes. Farmers lay rotting in their cottages when they should have been tending the wheat. Shepherds' crofts fell silent, their flocks wandering unattended, or taken by thieves desperate for food. What grain was harvested rotted in barns, for no one remained to guard it, or ships sank with their cargo before reaching port. And so the city that survived the pestilence now finds itself trapped in another snare. Famine. You see the signs everywhere. Children who once clung to their mothers' skirts now drag their feet, too weak to play. Men who once carried timbers across their shoulders stagger beneath empty baskets. The markets are bare, stalls deserted except for wilted cabbages and onions soft with rot. Even the rats grow bolder, fat on scraps while humans waste away. Hunger does not discriminate, but it humiliates before it kills. It makes beggars of everyone. For you, famine changes your work in ways you could not have imagined. The dead you collect no longer carry only the marks of plague. Black swellings, froth on lips, fevers that burn them hollow. Now you find corpses with bellies caved in, ribs sharp enough to cut your palms when you lift them. Their eyes are sunken, skin pulled tight like old parchment. You recognize the shape of starvation even when no one speaks it aloud. To say the word famine is to admit you've been defeated not just by pestilence, but by the very land itself. Worse still, you're no longer called only for bodies. Neighbours knock on your door not just to whisper of the dead, but to beg for scraps, for crumbs. They believe, perhaps rightly, that you scavenge more than anyone, that in the pits you find half-rotten apples clutched in stiff hands, crusts of bread inside torn satchels. Sometimes you do. Hunger drives you lower than you ever thought you would go. You remember the shame the first time you slipped a withered carrot from the pocket of a corpse. It was soft, bitter, barely food at all. Yet when you bit into it, you felt alive again. Shame can be swallowed as easily as food when famine sits at your table. The streets turn cruel. Bread riots break out near the river, where merchants guard dwindling stores behind locked warehouses. Mothers scream and claw at each other over a sack of flour, while guards beat them down with staves. You watch from a corner, unseen, the way you always are. In their desperation, the living look no different from the dying. You wonder how many of the faces you see now will be slack and still in your arms tomorrow. The church bells ring more often, not just for funerals, but for almsgiving. Priests distribute what little they can, thin broth, stale crusts. But even faith grows weak under famine's hand. The holy men themselves stagger with hunger, their vestments hanging loose on frail bodies. Some whisper that the famine is a second punishment, that God has turned his face away entirely. Others say it is simply the shadow of plague stretching on. Whatever the reason, no miracle fills empty stomachs. The worst is when famine and plague meet in the same house. You enter hovels where one child lies stiff, taken by fever, while his sister wastes beside him, lips cracked from thirst. You carry one out, then return days later for the other. Hunger weakens bodies so that sickness finds easier prey, and sickness steals labour from fields so that hunger grows stronger. The two dance together, hand in hand, a pair of devils circling the city until all inside are dizzy with despair. Even your fellow collectors falter. Once you joked bitterly together at the pits, trading black humour to soften the stench of death. Now their jokes have gone, replaced with hollow eyes and trembling hands. One collapses beside you while lifting a body, too weak to continue. Another disappears entirely, perhaps dead in a ditch, perhaps fled in search of food. You cannot blame them. Hunger unravels the will as quickly as disease does the flesh. At night, you dream of feasts, roasted meats, steaming breads, flagons of ale. You wake with your mouth wet, your belly cramping, your hand clawing at empty air. The cruelest part of famine is the way it takes not only strength but dignity. You think of yourself less as a man, more as an animal. The lines between human and rat blur when both gnaw on the same refuse. There are moments, rare but sharp, when famine reveals its truest horror, not in silence but in sound. The sound of a mother wailing when she has no milk left to give her child. The sound of neighbours fighting in the street, their blows weak, their curses hoarse, all for a sack of barley husks. The sound of children gnawing on leather straps, hoping to trick their stomachs into believing it is meat. These sounds haunt you even more than the groans of the plague. Disease is cruel, but swift. Hunger lingers, stretches the torment thin, forces people to watch themselves die bite by bite. And yet, you go on. You lift the bodies, dig the pits, swing the shovel. You have no choice. In famine, as in plague, work is survival. The dead still need collecting, and in tending to them, you sometimes find enough scraps, enough favours, enough mercy to scrape through another day. But you know famine has only begun its course. The fields are empty still, the barns hollow, the granaries echoing. There is no harvest coming soon to save you. One evening you sit by a pit after lowering another stiff figure inside. The setting sun paints the sky the colour of rust, the same shade as the blood crusted on your sleeves. You look down at the bodies, some swollen with fever, others shrunken with hunger. Pestilence and famine side by side, indistinguishable in the end. Death, you realise, has many disguises, but the grave accepts them all the same. You press your hands into the dirt, your stomach growling, your body weak, and you wonder, not for the first time, how much longer you can endure. The plague had broken your heart, but famine gnaws at your very bones. One destroys swiftly, the other slowly. Together they are worse than any nightmare you could have imagined. And still, the bells toll. The famine and plague together have hollowed the city. But what fills the emptiness left behind is stranger, darker. Faith, once a comfort, now twists into something harder, sharper. Desperate people no longer pray quietly in churches. They cry out in the streets, whipping themselves bloody, chanting in ragged unison, demanding that God look upon their suffering and relent. You see them before you hear them, a procession winding through the alleys, their backs flayed raw, scourges dripping red in their hands. They're called the flagellants, and they march barefoot over cobblestones slick with blood, singing hymns that sound more like screams. At first you think them mad, then you realise the madness is spreading. Each day more join their number, mothers who have lost children, fathers too weak to carry tools, widows stumbling behind the procession with eyes turned skyward. They believe the famine and plague are punishment for sin, and only through pain can forgiveness be bought. Pain is a currency everyone can afford when there is nothing else left to give. For you, their cries slice through your nights. When you return home after burying another dozen dead, their chanting still echoes from the squares. Sometimes you watch them from the shadows. Their faces are contorted, but not only with agony, there is ecstasy too. They welcome pain as salvation, their whips striking flesh in rhythm with the bells of churches that never seem to fall silent now. The sight unsettles you more than corpses do. The dead are quiet. The living, when driven mad by hunger and fear, are far more frightening. The church tries to control them, but the priests no longer hold the authority they once did. The people no longer look to robed men on gilded altars, but to ragged leaders bleeding in the dust. You see priests confronted in the streets, accused of hoarding food, accused of failing to pray hard enough, accused of sinning in secret while their flocks starve. Some priests vanish altogether, slipping away in the night. Others join the processions, robes discarded, backs bare beneath the lash. In this new city, faith is not a gentle hand. It is a whip, a shout, a frenzy. One evening you pass a square where a crowd has gathered. In the centre, torches burn high, throwing wild shadows against the church walls. A woman is bound to a post. The mob chants that she is the cause, a witch who called down pestilence and famine alike. You do not know her crime. Perhaps she muttered a curse in anger. Perhaps she brewed herbs for the sick. Perhaps she was simply too different, too alone. You watch as the flames climb higher, as her screams pierce the night until they stop. The crowd roars approval. For the first time you realize the plague and famine may not be the only things that kill you in this city. Fear makes people dangerous. From then on you walk more carefully. Your work, already despised, now draws suspicious glances. You handle the dead when others will not. To some, that marks you as unclean. To others, as tainted by the same darkness that spread the pestilence. Whispers follow you. Corpse keeper, death-touched, devil's servant. You tell yourself it is only fear speaking, but when a boy throws a stone at your back and shouts that you are cursed, you cannot shake the thought that one day the mob will turn its fury upon you. Still, you cannot look away from the way fanaticism consumes the city. Children too weak to walk are carried into the streets to join the chants. Old men collapse beneath their scourges but rise again, blood streaking their spines, convinced that each lash buys another day of mercy. You wonder if they are wrong. After all, you have seen plague rise and fall in waves, striking suddenly, then easing for weeks before returning. Perhaps when the fever quiets, they will believe their lashes drove it back. Perhaps belief is stronger than truth. One night, you follow one of their processions farther than usual, out past the city gates. The flagellants march into the countryside, their songs rising in the darkness, echoing against the hills. You stumble after them, curiosity stronger than fear, until they gather at a crossroads where gallows stand empty. There they fall upon the ground, writhing, screaming, beating themselves, until the earth beneath them runs black with blood. You watch until dawn, unable to look away. When the sun rises, their leader stands, arms outstretched, his back a ruin of torn flesh. He declares that God has heard, that deliverance is near. The crowd weeps. You feel nothing but cold. Deliverance is always promised, never seen. As famine deepens, so too does the fanaticism. Processions swell with hundreds, then thousands. The sound of chanting is constant, the whips snapping in every alley, every square, and where their cries rise, violence follows. Foreigners are dragged from their homes, accused of poisoning wells. Beggars are beaten for spreading sickness with their filth. Healers are burned as witches for mixing herbs. Each new victim is declared the cause, each death a supposed victory over pestilence. Yet still the bodies pile higher and still you dig the pits. You learn to keep your head down, to move quickly through the streets. Your shovel is not only for earth now but for defence, should a mob mistake you for one of the cursed. You keep your work quiet, your voice low, your presence shadowed. In a city gripped by fear and frenzy, survival depends not only on strength but on invisibility. And yet, part of you wonders if the flagellants are not entirely wrong. Perhaps pain does have power. You have lived among corpses long enough to know that life itself is fragile, balanced on a knife edge. What if suffering really could tilt the scales, persuade God to turn his gaze once more upon the city? You shake the thought away, ashamed, but it lingers. Even you are not immune to desperation. One dawn, after burying a child whose ribs cut sharper than any knife, you hear the chant of flagellants rising behind you. You stand at the edge of the pit, watching them come nearer, their blood glistening in the first light. For a moment, you imagine dropping your shovel, stripping your shirt, joining them. At least in their ranks there is unity, purpose, a shared madness instead of the lonely silence you drag with you to each grave. But then you look down at the bodies, at the swollen, starved, broken dead, and you remember what always waits at the end. Pain does not save them. Faith twisted into frenzy cannot stop the earth from swallowing them whole. You pick up your shovel again. Let the flagellants scream to the heavens. You know the truth. The only answer that ever comes is silence, and the only hands that lower the dead are your own. You do not notice the silence at first. You've grown so accustomed to noise, wails, bells, shouts, chanting, clanging, that your ears are numb to anything else. Yet one morning, when you drag your shovel out of your hovel and step into the narrow lane, the air feels wrong. You pause, tilting your head. No bells toll, no chanting echoes, no footsteps shuffle across the cobblestones. Only the faint creak of wood as shutters sway in the wind. The city has gone quiet. You walk cautiously, expecting some hidden crowd to erupt from around the corner, but the alleys remain empty. A toppled cart lies across the road, its wheels broken, grain spilling into the mud. No one comes to snatch it up. A dog noses at the grain, ribs showing through its mangy fur, then bolts at your approach. You bend to scoop a handful of kernels, dry and dirty, and pocket them. It is more food than you've seen in days. As you move deeper into the city, the silence thickens. Once bustling markets now stand abandoned. Stalls are collapsed, wares scattered, coins glinting in the dirt where no hands reach to gather them. Doors hang ajar as though their owners left in haste. You peer inside one house and see chairs overturned, dishes smashed, a crust of bread moulding on the table. A family fled or perished inside. You do not linger to check. The pestilence has done its work and famine has finished the rest. Those who survived the hunger either died of the sickness or fled to the countryside, hoping to escape both. But you know the countryside is no better. Hunger knows no walls, no gates. You once envied those who could leave. Now you wonder if you were the only fool who stayed. At the square where crowds once gathered to chant, only ashes remain. Charred wood juts from the ground like bones, remnants of pyres and makeshift stakes. A cracked whip lies coiled in the dust. The flagellants have gone, either dead or wandered elsewhere, carrying their frenzy into other towns. Their absence is more unsettling than their presence had been. Fanatic cries at least were proof of life. Silence speaks of nothing. You wander like a ghost through streets that once teemed with merchants, soldiers, priests, beggars. You count fewer than a dozen people in the entire morning, each a shadow flitting away at your approach, faces hollow, eyes wild. No words are exchanged. In this city now, every stranger is a threat, every voice a risk. At midday, hunger gnaws too sharply to ignore. You pick through the ruins of houses, scavenging what you can. A half sack of flour infested with beetles, a jar of rancid lard, a single dried onion shriveled almost to dust. You eat without care for taste or smell. Filth no longer frightens you, starvation does. When evening comes, you return to your pits. They gape like wounds at the edge of the city, and even here the silence presses down. The work is no lighter, only lonelier. You drag bodies one by one, heaving them into the earth. They no longer come in wagons piled high, driven by shouting men. Now they arrive in twos and threes, dragged by relatives too weak to speak. Sometimes they are not dragged at all. You find them crumpled in doorways, sitting upright in alleys, eyes staring. Once you stumble on a whole family seated around a table as if still waiting for supper. Parents, children, even a baby in a cradle, all stiff, silent, frozen where they starved. You bury them together, unable to separate one from another. By the second week of silence, you begin to lose track of days. Without bells or crowds, time blurs. Morning and night become vague ideas. You wake when you can, work when you must, sleep when exhaustion drags you down. The city shrinks in your mind to pits and corpses over and over until the world feels like one endless grave. Loneliness becomes its own torment. Before you dreaded the hatred of others, the spit, the stones, the curses. Now you would give anything to hear someone curse your name, just to know a human voice still lingers in these streets. You catch yourself speaking aloud to the dead as you lower them into the soil, muttering apologies or prayers you no longer believe. Sometimes you imagine they answer, whispering in the rustle of grass, in the buzz of flies, in the scrape of your shovel against bone. At night, this silence deepens until your heartbeat is the loudest sound you know. You lie awake, staring at the rafters, listening for footsteps that never come. Sleep brings no relief. Dreams are filled with processions of corpses marching silently through empty streets, their mouths open but no sound escaping. You wake gasping, convinced the silence itself is suffocating you. One night, you cannot bear it any longer. You leave your hovel and wander through the city with a torch. Its light flickers against walls scrawled with fading words. Mercy, repent, gone. The torch crackles, the only sound in a world otherwise mute. You shout into the darkness just to hear your own voice echo back. The echo returns hollow, mocking, but at least it breaks the stillness for a moment. On the 15th day, you see movement at last. A small group of survivors passes near the cathedral, gaunt as skeletons carrying bundles on their backs. They do not look at you. Their eyes are fixed on the gates, on the road beyond, on the hope of escape. You consider calling out, asking to join them, but something stops you. Perhaps shame, knowing you reek of graves. Perhaps fear, knowing strangers can be as dangerous as hunger. You watch them go until the gates close behind them, their footsteps swallowed by distance. The silence rushes back in like a tide. By the end of the month, the city feels less like a place of the living than a monument to the dead. Silence is its anthem, emptiness its creed. Even the rats seem fewer, though you know that cannot be true. They hide better now, feasting where you cannot see. You stand one evening atop the highest mound of earth by your pits, shovel in hand, and look out across the city. Roofs sag, chimneys lean, weeds split the cobbles. The silence stretches unbroken from wall to wall, a vast emptiness pressing on your chest. You realize with cold clarity that if you were to die here, collapse among the corpses you bury, no one would find you, no one would know. The silence would swallow you as it has swallowed everything else. The thought terrifies you, yet also tempts you. To vanish into silence might be easier than to keep shouldering the shovel, keep walking through streets that no longer belong to the living. You grip the handle tighter, forcing yourself to keep standing. As long as you keep digging, you tell yourself there is proof that someone remains. One last heartbeat against the silence, one last voice against the void. The silence is no longer empty. It is filled with whispers. At first you think it is the wind, curling through alleyways and door frames, making voices where none exist. But then the whispers follow you, growing louder when you pass certain streets, stronger when you linger near the pits. They murmur in tones too soft to catch, yet the cadence is unmistakable. Speech, language, fragments of words that slip away when you try to listen too closely. You tell yourself it is exhaustion. Too many days with too little food, too many nights without real sleep. But exhaustion cannot explain the feeling that eyes are watching you when no one stands nearby. It cannot explain the faint figures you glimpse at the edge of your torchlight. Shapes like people, thin and grey, vanishing when you turn your head. The dead, you begin to think, do not rest. It begins with small things. One night, after you bury a family together in a shallow pit, you return the next morning to find the earth disturbed. The soil has shifted as if something clawed its way upward from beneath. You dig with shaking hands, expecting to find rats or dogs. Instead, you uncover nothing but the corpses as you left them, still, cold, unmoving. Yet the sight of the disturbed dirt will not leave your mind. Another time you hear footsteps behind you while dragging a corpse. Heavy, shuffling steps as though someone follows. You whirl around, shovel raised, only to face an empty alley. The body at your feet seems heavier afterward, as though reluctant to move. Soon, tales spread among the few survivors who remain. A child whispers of seeing his dead mother walking past the gate at dawn, cradling an infant that should have been long buried. A gaunt priest mutters that souls cannot cross into heaven when buried without rites, and so they linger, wandering. A woman screams in the marketplace that her husband came knocking at her door, though she herself lowered him into your pit weeks ago. You dismiss these as madness born of grief, yet deep down doubt gnaws at you. You of all people know how restless the dead can seem. You remember their stiffened fingers catching in your clothing, their mouths falling open as if to speak, their eyes staring long after life has gone. Perhaps it is not madness at all. One evening, while returning from the pits, you pass the old cathedral. Its doors stand ajar, though you remember securing them weeks ago. Inside, moonlight slants through broken windows, illuminating pews covered in dust. As you step forward, the sound of chanting rises low and broken, like many voices murmuring in unison. Your blood chills. You push the door wider, but the voices cease instantly. Only silence greets you. The pews are empty, the altar abandoned. You back away, heart hammering. From that night on, you avoid the cathedral. The whispers at the pits worsen. You hear them clearly now, though never long enough to catch meaning. They come from beneath the soil as you dig. They rise when you lower a body, murmuring until the last clod of dirt covers the face. Sometimes the whispers sound like pleas, other times like laughter. Once, unmistakably, you hear your own name breathe softly from the darkness below. Sleep becomes impossible. Whenever you close your eyes, you dream of corpses climbing from their graves, mouths moving without sound. They gather around your hovel, staring through the cracks in the door, waiting. You wake gasping, yet the silence afterward is almost worse, for you cannot tell if the whispers were truly dreams, or if they linger still, just beyond the edge of hearing. The work itself grows harder. Corpses feel heavier, more stubborn, as if unwilling to be moved. Twice ropes snap as you try to drag them, though the fibres were strong. Once, as you shovel earth onto a man's face, his hand twitches. You leap back, staring, until you realise it is only the spasm of stiff muscles, or so you tell yourself. The few who remain in the city begin to shun you more than ever. Before they cursed you openly. Now they cross themselves and back away silently, eyes wide with fear. They call you companion of ghosts, whispering that your work has bound you too closely to the dead. One woman hisses that you are marked, that soon you will join the corpses in their midnight wandering. Her words linger long after she flees. You try to convince yourself you're not cursed, yet the signs pile up. Doors creak open at night when no wind blows. Shadows linger on walls after your torch has passed. Once, while hauling a corpse, you swear its lips moved, forming words you could not hear. On the 20th night of whispers, you flee your hovel in terror. Sleep refuses you. Food sickens you. Silence mocks you. You wander through the city like one haunted, which you suppose you are. Every alley seems to harbour shapes. Every doorway hides watching eyes. You clutch your shovel not as a tool but as a weapon. The pits call to you. Though you dread them, you cannot stay away. You find yourself drawn back again and again, standing on their edges, listening to the murmurs below. Sometimes you think they are trying to tell you something, warn you, perhaps, or beckon you. Other times you believe they are mocking you, reminding you that one day you too will lie beneath the soil you shovel. You wonder if this is the fate of all corpse collectors, not death by plague, not starvation, but madness. To spend so long in the company of the dead that you begin to hear their voices, see their faces, feel their presence at your shoulder. You try to remember the man you were before, the man who once quailed at the thought of touching a cold hand. That man is gone, buried with the first corpse you laid into the pit. What remains is someone else entirely, someone the whispers have claimed, and yet a strange thought creeps in. What if the whispers are not madness at all? What if they are truth? What if the dead really do rise restless, unsatisfied with shallow graves and prayers never spoken? If that is so, then who better than you to hear them? Who better than the grave digger, the one who holds the shovel and knows every face that has vanished into the dirt? Perhaps the whispers are not a curse but a calling. The thought frightens you more than anything else, because if it is true, then your work will never end. Not in this life, not in death. You will dig forever, listening forever, companion of corpses even when you yourself are laid among them. On the last night of the month you sit beside the largest pit, staring into the dark. The whispers rise around you, louder than ever, a chorus of voices shifting and overlapping. Some weep, some laugh, some rage, some plead. You close your eyes, and for the first time you do not cover your ears. You listen, and though you cannot understand their words, you feel them settle inside you, cold and heavy as soil. You are theirs now. You do not mean to speak. The first words slip from your mouth before you realize what you're doing, barely more than a hoarse whisper. You sit on the lip of the pit, staring into the black soil, the stench curling upward, when a question escapes you. What do you want from me? The voices below answer at once. They do not form words you can understand, not exactly, but the tone is unmistakable. Hunger, sorrow, longing, rage. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of murmurs rising like the rustle of wind in dead leaves. For a heartbeat, your skin prickles with terror. But then something stranger fills you. Relief. You've spent weeks tormented by whispers with no reply, half mad with uncertainty. Now, at last, you know you're not imagining them. You are heard, and once you are heard, you cannot stop. That night, you remain at the pit long after the moon has risen high. You speak aloud, quietly at first, then more steadily. You tell the dead about your day, about the weight of the bodies, about the way people shun you in the streets. You tell them about your loneliness, about the memories of warmth and laughter you can barely recall. The voices shift as you speak. At times they grow softer, almost soothing, as if listening. At other times they grow louder, overlapping like a mob pressing close, urging you on. You find yourself comforted. These are the only companions who do not curse you, who do not flee at the sight of you. Even if they frighten you, at least they remain. The next day, the work feels different. You drag corpses as always, but now you murmur to them while you work. You apologize when their limbs catch on stones. You reassure them when their heads loll unnaturally, telling them it will be over soon. Once, without thinking, you even thank one for his patience as you roll him into the pit. It is madness, you know. But madness has become easier to bear than silence. Soon, speaking is not enough. On the 5th night of your new communion, you bring a small loaf of bread to the pit. It is hard and stale, but you tear it into pieces and drop them into the dark soil as an offering. For you whisper. The voices rise in reply, not softer, not louder, but sharper, more intent. Your heart pounds with a terrible pride. You're doing something right. After that, you bring more. Crusts, bones, whatever scraps you can spare. Sometimes you even spill a little water from your flask. You do not know why. Perhaps you believe it will ease their thirst. Perhaps you're simply desperate to keep them pleased. And yet the more you give, the more they seem to want. The whispers follow you now beyond the pits. They curl at the edges of your hearing while you walk through empty streets. They hum softly as you try to sleep. You cannot escape them, and you do not try. You begin to answer aloud even when others are nearby. A passing widow sees you muttering to the air and crosses herself violently before scurrying away. You laugh bitterly. Let her fear you. At least someone listens. One evening, while dragging a corpse through the square, you hear a clear word rise above the murmur, "Stay." You freeze, staring at the body. The lips are slack, the eyes rolled back, yet the word lingers in your ears. Stay. Your hands tremble. Did you imagine it? Or was it a command? You obey regardless, lingering beside the corpse long into the night, as though waiting for further instruction. None comes, yet in the morning you feel oddly satisfied, as though you have passed some test. From then on you begin to ask questions. Do you want prayers? You whisper. The voices shift but do not answer. Do you want offerings? Another restless murmur. Finally trembling, do you want me? The silence that follows chills you more than any reply. It is a silence heavy with certainty, with inevitability, as though the answer has already been given and you're too frightened to admit you know it. Your health begins to falter. Food tastes like ash, water like rot. Sleep comes rarely, and when it does, you dream of lying among the corpses, soil pressing against your lips, whispers pouring into your ears until you open your mouth and let them fill you. You wake shaking but strangely peaceful, as though the dream were not nightmare but promise. People notice. They always avoided you, but now they look upon you with open horror. Your eyes are sunken, your skin pale and marked with sores you did not notice forming. Children cry when you pass. Men mutter that you smell not of sweat, but of the grave itself. A woman spits in your path and hisses that you walk halfway to death already. Perhaps she is right. You feel more at home among the pits than in the living city. When you stand at the edge, shovel in hand, the whispers rise in greeting like a congregation welcoming its priest. And that is what you have become, isn't it? Not merely a collector, not merely a digger. You are the one who listens, who answers, who carries the voices of the dead upon your shoulders. One night, you kneel beside the pit, forehead pressed to the earth. The whispers coil around you, insistent, endless. For the first time you whisper back not with questions, but with vows. I will not leave you. I will carry you. I am yours. The soil seems to breathe beneath your cheek, rising and falling like a living chest. For a heartbeat you feel arms encircle you, cold but gentle, pulling you close, and you do not resist. When dawn comes, you rise with dirt clinging to your skin, hair matted, eyes burning. You do not wash, you do not eat. Instead, you go to the cathedral you once avoided. Its doors gape open as before. Inside, shadows pool in the corners, deep and thick. You kneel before the altar, whispering your prayers not to heaven but to the restless below. You have stopped fearing madness. Madness is freedom. Madness is communion. And now, when you hear the whispers, you do not simply listen. You begin to answer. The title comes unbidden, but you feel it settle on your shoulders like a cloak. Priest. You never sought it, never asked for it. You were once only a labourer, a wretch paid in scraps to drag away what no one else dared touch. But now the work has changed. The whispers are no longer background noise, they are liturgy. The pit is no longer a hole in the ground, it is an altar. And you're no longer simply the man who digs, you're the voice, the mouth, the bridge. At first you fear the thought. Priesthood was meant for the cathedral, for men in robes who spoke of light and salvation. But those men abandoned the sick. They barred their doors while the bells tolled death. They refused to bury the masses, and you have remained day after day carrying the forgotten. If priesthood is measured by devotion, then who else deserves the name? The dead seem to agree. The more you speak with them, the more their voices sharpen. The murmur grows clearer, as though your ears are finally tuned to the right pitch. You catch fragments now. Cold, carry, remember, blood. When you repeat the words back, the whispers surge with approval. It is not language, not entirely, but it is communion. Your rituals grow elaborate. No longer do you simply dump the bodies into the pit. You pause with each one, muttering words you do not fully understand but that feel right on your tongue. Sometimes you lay the corpses carefully, aligning their limbs as though preparing them for sleep. Other times you smear ash or soil across their brows. The gestures come without thought, instinctive, as if remembered from another life. The townsfolk notice. From afar they watch you kneeling over bodies, your lips moving in prayer. They whisper that you've gone mad, that you consort with the plague, that you are cursed. Some claim they see shapes at your back when you work, flickers of shadows too large to belong to you alone. Others say they hear voices rising from the pit whenever you pass, though they're too frightened to linger and listen. A rumour spreads. You're not merely a corpse collector anymore. You are a necromancer. You laugh when you hear it, though the laughter feels hollow. You never sought power, never raised the dead. And yet, when the voices answer, when the soil shifts beneath your hands, is it truly so far from the truth? One evening a desperate mother approaches you. She clutches a bundle against her chest, a child so feverish he cannot lift his head. She begs you to help, not because she thinks you can cure him, but because she believes you can speak to him after he dies. Her eyes brim with tears as she whispers, "Please, let him tell me he is safe." The request chills you, but you do not refuse. That night when the boy's small body joins the others, you kneel long after, calling his name into the soil. And for the first time, the whispers shift to a child's pitch. You cannot tell if it is real or your own guilt twisting into sound, but you repeat the words to his mother the next morning. Safe, not alone, waiting. She collapses at your feet, sobbing in gratitude. Word spreads faster than plague. Within days, more come. Widows begging to hear their husbands' voices, orphans clutching scraps of cloth, begging for one last message from their mothers. Some leave coins at your feet, others bread or wine. At first you protest, but when you carry the offerings to the pit, the whispers rise with a hunger so sharp it makes your head spin. You begin to accept. The work transforms again. You're no longer simply a collector, you're a confessor, a conduit. People seek you out not to bury their dead, but to speak with them. You become both feared and needed, cursed and revered. Some call you a ghoul, others call you blessed. And though you tell yourself it is all madness, deep down you know you have found a role more binding than any church could grant. The cathedral doors remain barred, but the people flock to you instead. They gather at the edges of the pits, leaving offerings, whispering prayers. They dare not descend, but you do. And when you speak into the soil, the replies come stronger than ever. The ground hums beneath your knees, the voices weaving into a chorus. One night, as you kneel, the words come not as fragments, but as a full command. Stay with us. The sound reverberates through your bones. You stagger, clutching your chest. The pit yawns below, darker than the night sky, and for the first time you feel it not as emptiness, but as invitation. Your legs tremble with the urge to step forward, to let the soil swallow you. You do not yet, but the thought lingers, heavy and sweet. The days blur. You cannot remember when you last ate. You cannot remember when you last slept without dreams of being buried. Your skin grows grey, your hair thin, but you do not care. The living world has faded into a shadow, while the dead sing louder every night. One evening when you walk through the streets, people part around you in silence. Not out of scorn this time, but reverence. You hear the word hissed from their lips, priest. Some bow their heads, others touch the ground where your feet have passed. You should laugh, but you do not. Because it is true. You're no longer the wretch who dragged bodies for coin. You're the servant of the pit, the chosen voice of those who outnumber the living. And though your body weakens, though your breath comes shallow, you feel a strength greater than flesh. You're sustained by whispers, by soil, by the endless company of the dead. And deep inside you know where this path leads. Not away, not back to the world of sunlight and laughter, but downward, into the pit, into the choir, into the dark embrace that waits, patient and eternal. The dead do not ask forever. They ask only that you join them, and as the whispers rise like a hymn, you realize you're almost ready to answer. The day begins with silence, but not the kind you expect. No tolling bells, no weeping in the alleys, no calls for you to collect another corpse. Instead, when you step from your hovel, you find the streets already emptied. Doors are shut, windows barred, smoke curling from chimneys where once there were only cold hearths. It takes you a moment to understand. They are waiting for you. At the edge of the pit, a crowd has gathered. Not the scattered handful of mourners you're used to, but dozens, perhaps hundreds. Men and women who have survived this long by avoiding your gaze now stand in reverent silence, their eyes fixed on you. You feel their expectation like a weight pressing down. Some hold offerings, loaves of stale bread, jugs of wine, even trinkets pried from the dead. Others clutch nothing at all but gaze at you with hollow devotion. A woman steps forward and kneels, laying a rosary at your feet. She whispers, "Father." You should recoil, but instead the word settles easily into your chest. Father, priest, collector, grave tender. You've worn so many names that one more feels like another skin to drape across your shoulders. You descend to the pit the way you always have. But today, as you stand at the edge, the earth looks different. It no longer gapes like a wound. Instead, it breathes. The soil rises and falls in a slow rhythm, like the chest of a slumbering giant. You can almost see faces in the folds of dirt, their eyes closed, their lips moving with the whisper prayers that have haunted your dreams. You kneel, press your hands into the soil, and the ground is warm. Too warm. Heat pulses upward, thrumming in time with your heart. The voices no longer murmur, they chant. Join, stay, one. The crowd gasps. They cannot hear what you hear, but they sense it. You realize then that your body has begun to change again. Your skin, once only grey with fatigue, now bears streaks of earth, like veins of soil spreading beneath the surface. Your fingernails are cracked and blackened, as though already rotting. Yet you feel no pain. If anything, you feel lighter, as though gravity itself has loosened its grip. The people kneel as one, murmuring prayers not to their God, but to you. A man calls out, "Take us with you, let us be remembered in the pit." His voice trembles not with fear but longing. Another cries, "Bless my child, Father, that she may be spared." You should tell them you are no priest, that you cannot bless, cannot save, cannot spare. But when you open your mouth, other words emerge, not yours. The pit remembers, the soil keeps, the dead do not abandon. The crowd wails in awe, some beat their breasts, others weep, and you realize with a shiver, the dead spoke through you. That night, you do not sleep. The earth calls louder than ever, and when you close your eyes, you see yourself buried, but not suffocated, not gone. Instead, you are standing beneath the soil, in a vast cathedral made of bone and root. The corpses are not scattered heaps, but congregants in neat rows, their skulls tilted upward, waiting for you at the pulpit. And in that dream, your voice does not tremble. It commands. When you wake, the taste of soil is still on your tongue. Days pass, but you no longer mark them. Hunger fades, thirst fades. What you crave now is the pit. Each time you kneel there, more of yourself seeps into the earth. Sweat, blood, strands of hair. The ground drinks it all greedily, and in return, you feel stronger, though not in the way flesh is strong. Your strength is not muscle but gravity, not breath but silence. The people come more frequently. They no longer fear you. They fear to be without you. And so they gather, begging for scraps of comfort, fragments of voices. You give them what they crave, repeating the words that rise unbidden in your throat. Sometimes they are soothing, sometimes terrifying, but always, always true. And then one evening something changes. You kneel, as always, but when you press your hands to the soil, it does not merely thrum. It opens. A crack splits the ground before you, silent and clean, revealing darkness deeper than night. The crowd shrieks, some stumbling back, but many remain rooted to the spot, transfixed. From the fissure rises a smell both sweet and foul, like flowers rotting in a sealed crypt. And then hands, grey, skeletal, some dripping with remnants of flesh, others bare bone. They rise from the crack, not to drag you in but to reach outward, as if in welcome. The crowd collapses to their knees, sobbing, wailing. Some even stretch their own hands forward, desperate to touch. The voices thunder, "Come!" Your heart races, but not with fear. This, you know, is the culmination of everything. All the nights of whispers, all the burdens of the dead, all the solitude and scorn. This is the invitation, the initiation. The pit no longer demands your service. It offers you belonging. You teeter at the edge, body trembling, torn between the gravity of the soil and the last fragile threads of the world above. You glance back once at the living. Their eyes shine with fanatic devotion, their mouths whispering your name. They do not want a corpse collector anymore. They want a saviour. And yet you understand, salvation does not rise upward. It sinks. You step closer. The soil crumbles beneath your heel. The hands stretch higher. eager but gentle as though they fear to startle you. The darkness yawns wider, no longer abyss but sanctuary. In that moment, you know with bone-deep certainty, you're no longer merely of the living. You're already half-claimed, a living grave, flesh and soil intertwined. Whether you leap willingly or are swallowed whole, the end is inevitable. Still you linger one heartbeat longer, savouring the silence before the plunge. Because once you answer the call, there will be no silence, only the eternal chorus of the pit. The night is heavy with expectation. You feel it in the crowd, in the murmuring air, in the earth that breathes beneath your boots. The pit's fissure gapes wider than before, its edges glowing faintly with a light that is neither fire nor moon, but something deeper, something born of the marrow of the dead. The voices rise, insistent, "Come, join, stay." You do not fight them anymore. You do not even question. For so long you resisted, thinking yourself cursed, a scavenger among ruins, a collector of refuse too vile for anyone else to touch. But now, standing at the edge of the abyss, you realize you were never chosen for punishment. You were chosen for purpose. The hands reach higher, not grasping but beckoning. They are not cruel. They are tender. Some still bear the jewellery of their former lives, rings on bone fingers, bracelets dangling from wrists gnawed half away. Their touch is not icy, as you imagined, but warm, almost fevered. The warmth seeps into your own skin as one fingertip brushes yours, and you feel your pulse echo not in your chest, but in the pit itself, as though the ground beats with your heart. Behind you, the people are crying out, "Father, bless us. Do not leave us. Take us with you." Their voices clash with desperation, devotion, dread. You wonder if they understand what they are asking. To follow you into the pit is not salvation of the body. It is something stranger, deeper, perhaps even worse. Yet they crave it still, because in their eyes, to rot in the earth with you is preferable to rotting alone. You raise your hand. Your gesture is not planned but instinct. At once the crowd falls silent. A hush spreads across the street like frost, and for the first time you feel their worship fully. They do not see a corpse collector anymore. They see the living bridge between flesh and soil, a saint of the pit. Words pour from your mouth, though you do not choose them. The grave remembers, the pit holds, the dead endure. The fissure yawns wider in answer. You step forward. The earth groans beneath you, but it is not the groan of collapse. It is the groan of welcome, a house settling as its master enters. The skeletal hands steady you, not dragging but guiding. Your knees buckle as the warmth surges higher through your veins, flooding you until your vision blurs and your limbs tremble. You fall, yet you do not strike the ground. The hands catch you, lowering you gently into the abyss. The last sight of the living world above is the crowd, their faces upturned, eyes wide with terror and awe. Some reach toward you, clawing at the air as though they could cling to you, but you are already beyond their reach. The darkness closes in, and then light, not daylight, not firelight, but a dim phosphorescence glowing from the walls of the pit. The soil itself shines faintly, and you see faces embedded in it, skulls fused with clay, jawbones locked in silent hymns, eyes sockets blooming with roots. They do not frighten you anymore. They watch, they witness, they welcome. The hands carry you deeper until the ground levels out. You stand upon a floor of packed earth that is strangely firm, though it pulses faintly like living flesh. All around you stretch vast halls carved not by men but by time and death. It is exactly as you dreamed, a cathedral of bone and root, its arches woven from spines, its columns formed by stacks of skulls, and before you they gather, the corpses, not shuffling or staggering as you once collected them, but standing in reverent rows. Some are whole, some half decayed, others bear skeletons, yet all are upright, their heads bowed. Their mouths do not move, yet their voices thunder inside your skull. You have come. Your legs weaken, but not from fear, from recognition. You fall to your knees as the chorus swells. You are ours, you are us, you are the keeper. The title strikes you like a hammer. Keeper, not collector, not scavenger, not exile. Keeper of the pit, guardian of the grave. For the first time, you are not cast aside, you belong. A figure steps forward from the ranks. Taller than the rest, cloaked in shadow, its face half shrouded, half bone. Its voice is not thunder but whisper, yet it cuts deeper. Do you accept? The choice shudders through you. Part of you still clings to the world above, the warmth of the sun, the fleeting taste of bread, the memory of laughter long silenced. To accept is to bury all of that forever. To refuse is... what? To rise again, unwanted. To resume dragging corpses under a sky that will never see you as more than filth? You bow your head. Your lips move without thought. I accept. The cathedral erupts in sound. Not noise, not screams, but a harmony so vast it shakes your marrow. The corpses raise their heads in unison, empty sockets blazing with faint light. Roots curl upward from the soil, twining around your wrists, your ankles, your chest. At first they constrict, but then you realize. They are binding you not to imprison, but to connect. They thread into your veins, your bones, your breath. The soil itself enters you, and for the first time you understand the pit. You see every body you ever lowered into it, every face you tried to forget. They are not lost. They are here, part of this vast choir. They whisper not in torment but in communion. They remember the world above, every detail you thought forgotten. Through them, you feel centuries stretch backward and forward. You feel history not as stories but as living presence, pressing against your skull. The pit was never a hole of decay. It was always a mouth, open to swallow and preserve, to keep the world's memory in flesh and soil. You were chosen not because you were lowest, but because you could hear it calling. When the roots finally release you, you do not stumble. You stand taller than before, your skin streaked with earth, your eyes burning with faint light. You're no longer only man. You're something between, something eternal. The figure before you bows its head. Keeper. And the chorus answers, filling the cavern, shaking the bones overhead. Keeper. You breathe deep, and the air tastes of dust and eternity. Above, the living world still waits. But for the first time, you do not feel burdened by its need. You feel its weight only distantly, like a fading echo. Your place is here, where silence sings and death endures. You're not merely the collector of corpses anymore. You are the grave that keeps them. The silence after the chorus fades is almost unbearable. You stand alone in the cathedral of bone, though you're never truly alone again. The dead linger within you, their whispers now folded into your breath, their memories humming in your blood. The figure who named you keeper has vanished, or perhaps it never existed apart from the voices. Either way, the weight of the title presses into your shoulders, not like a burden, but like armour. Yet even now something tugs you upward. Above the earth, people wait. Their cries still echo in your ears, the desperate pleading of those who saw you sink into the pit. They do not know what you have become. They do not know whether you will return, or whether you have already rotted into the dirt with the others, and part of you wonders, do they deserve to know? The corpses around you remain bowed, silent now, as if granting permission, or perhaps waiting for you to decide. The soil pulses faintly under your boots, urging, questioning. The cathedral is a tomb, but it is also a womb. It does not bind you, it births you anew. So you climb. The ascent is slower than the descent. Each step feels heavier, as though the earth clings to you, reluctant to release its new keeper. Roots brush your skin as you rise, as if testing whether you will falter, whether you belong below after all. But you keep moving, until the faint glow of the fissure above widens into night. When at last you pull yourself onto the surface, the world feels strangely fragile. The air is lighter, thinner. The stars seem dim compared to the glow that burned in the pit. Yet the crowd is still there, though smaller now, thinned by fear or exhaustion. Those who remain gasp as you emerge. They stare at you as though you have clawed your way out of the grave itself. And perhaps you have. Your clothes are torn, streaked with soil that clings to your skin as if alive. Your eyes still burn faintly, though you cannot see their glow. You feel taller, heavier, though you weigh no more. When you inhale, the breath of the pit moves with you, and when you exhale, a faint sigh stirs across the gathered people, making their hair lift and their spines shiver. A woman in the front falls to her knees. "Saint," she whispers. Others echo her. "Saint, keeper, father of the pit." You should deny it. You should tell them the truth, that you are no saviour, no holy man, only a corpse collector who has gone too far into the dark. But the words do not come, for the pit has given you more than survival. It has given you authority, and they crave it. The people press closer, some weeping, some smiling with hollow devotion. A child clutches your leg, eyes wide with hunger and awe. An old man kisses the dirt that fell from your boots. They want you to speak, to bless, to command. You realize with dawning clarity, their hope has withered so thin that even the grave looks like a harvest. You lift your hand, again, not by choice but by instinct. The same silence falls as before. You hear your own voice, but it is not quite yours, deeper, layered with countless whispers. The dead remain, the pit endures, the living must remember. They bow as though thunder shook them. Some sob. Others shout praise, their voices cracked but fervent. You see the fire in their eyes, the kind that will spread, the kind that will burn cities and topple thrones if fed. And you feel the danger of it, because they will follow you now, they will die for you. Worse, they will kill for you. The whispers in your blood stir uneasily. Some urge you to let it happen, to become more than man, to lead the living into the grave willingly, to build a kingdom of rot above ground. Others murmur caution, reminding you that the pit's strength lies in silence, in secrecy, not in conquest. You feel torn in two, keeper below, saint above. The people chant now a rising rhythm, keeper, keeper, keeper. The sound rattles through the empty streets, echoing off the walls of ruined houses, shattering the fragile quiet of the plague-stricken town. More faces appear from doorways, shadows drawn into the flickering torchlight. Soon the crowd swells again, desperate, fervent. You look into their eyes and see what you once feared most, faith. Faith is heavier than corpses. Faith cannot be buried. You try to speak again, but the words falter. Not because you are unwilling, but because you understand what they will mean. Every word you utter now will root in them like the pit's roots in your veins. If you tell them to kneel, they will kneel. If you tell them to cast themselves into the fissure, they will leap without hesitation. You remember the days when you begged for bread and were spat upon. You remember the nights when neighbours turned away, muttering curses, as though your work spread plague itself. You remember the children who mocked you, the priests who shunned you, the lords who pretended you were not human. Now those same kinds of faces kneel. You're not sure whether the pit saved you or damned you, but you know one thing, it changed the world's balance. Above ground, power rots quickly. Kings fall, empires crumble, faith burns away in wars and greed. But below ground, the pit waits, eternal, untouched. And now its voice rises through you. The crowd chants still, "Keeper, keeper." You raise your hand once more and silence answers. The words you speak come from the marrow of the earth. You will not fear the grave. You will not despise the dead. The pit is not curse, it is covenant. Gasps, tears, fervent cries, they believe, and you know, with a certainty as deep as the soil beneath your feet, that this is only the beginning. The dead will keep whispering. The living will keep listening, and you stand between, the bridge they have long awaited. You are the corpse collector, no more. You are the keeper of two worlds. But whether that is salvation or damnation, you cannot yet tell. The crowd does not disperse after your words. They remain long into the night, huddled in the torchlight as though your presence shields them from the invisible plague seeping through the air. Their eyes cling to you with the same desperate need you once carried when staring at an empty bowl of bread. You remember what hunger felt like, but this hunger is stranger, sharper, hunger of the soul. It begins quietly. A mother presses a strip of cloth torn from her child's shroud into your hand, begging you to bless it. An old man lays his broken walking stick at your feet, asking for strength to keep moving. A boy places a dead bird into your palm, hoping you might bring it back to life. You want to laugh, to tell them you're still only flesh and bone, still plagued with weariness and scars. But when you open your mouth, the pit speaks with you, and every word lands like law carved into stone. You whisper to the cloth, and the mother weeps in gratitude. You touch the old man's shoulder, and he limps away with fire in his eyes. You close the boy's hand around the bird, telling him the grave accepts all, and he nods as if this is the greatest wisdom he has ever heard. A line forms, then a circle, then an unending swarm. They kneel, they press their foreheads to the dirt. They call you keeper, not in fear, but in devotion. And in that moment you see the danger made flesh, for faith spreads faster than plague. By dawn, whispers race through the broken streets. The corpse collector has returned, no longer a man, but a chosen vessel. Some call you prophet, others call you saint. A few call you saviour of the dead, the one who will end the plague not by healing, but by teaching people to embrace it. You do not correct them. You cannot. The pit's voice inside you hums approval. Soon fires burn in doorways, not for warmth, but as signals. People gather, chanting your name into the night, their voices blending with the bells tolling for the newly dead. What once was mourning now becomes ritual. Death no longer frightens them. They carry their corpses to the fissure willingly, whispering prayers you never taught them, words they shaped from fragments of your own speech. At first, you think it will stay here, in this town of ruin and rats. But word travels. Travellers carry stories with them like seeds in their shoes. By the next week, strangers arrive. Skeletal men from distant villages, widows from neighbouring parishes, children with hollow eyes who have walked for miles. They fall at your feet before you even speak, and you realise with a hollow shudder the pit's covenant has taken root. Your daily life changes in ways you never imagined. You do not collect corpses anymore, not in the old way. Instead, they are brought to you in procession, wrapped in linen, carried like offerings. People sing as they walk, not dirges but hymns. They leave the dead at your feet, and you touch each body before it is lowered into the fissure. Some families linger, hoping for a sign. If the corpse twitches, no matter if it is merely gas escaping, a muscle spasming, they shout praise, convinced of your power. You begin to understand what kings must feel. Not the comfort of wealth, but the terrible weight of eyes that never look away. You're both cage and flame. Nights grow louder. Torches dot the streets in patterns like constellations. They gather beneath your window, chanting until dawn, their voices ragged, their throats bleeding. You have not asked for this, yet they give it. You have not ordered them, yet they obey. And when you finally step outside, silence falls as though the world itself has been held by the throat. The pit inside you whispers two truths, braided like roots. One, that this power is necessary. With faith, people do not panic. With ritual, they do not riot. With belief, they find order amidst plague. Two, that power will consume you, because already you see what their faith demands. A man accuses his neighbour of blasphemy, claiming he mocked the keeper. A mob drags the neighbour before you, begging you to judge. You do not want this. You do not want their blood on your hands, but their eyes burn, desperate for your word. If you do not answer, they will tear the man apart anyway. So you speak. You tell them the pit accepts all and mercy is the truest offering. They release him, but you know it will not always be so easy. Next time, they will crave a harsher sentence. Next time, they will crave sacrifice. And the pit does not forbid it. Weeks pass. You lose track of days. Plague bells ring endlessly, but no longer does anyone scream or flee. They carry the dead calmly, even joyfully. Some families prepare themselves while still alive, dressing in funeral linen, lying down at the fissure, waiting for you to bless them before they roll into the dark. You should be horrified. But part of you, the part bound to the whispers, feels pride. They are not afraid anymore. They have made death their covenant. Pilgrims arrive from further away. Merchants abandon their routes to kneel at your feet. Soldiers desert their posts to hear you speak. Rumours swell that the keeper cannot die, that the keeper commands the plague, that the keeper himself is the pit wearing flesh. And then the first banner rises. You see it one morning at the edge of the square, black cloth painted with a white skull, roots curling from its jaw. A group of young men carry it high, chanting, "The keeper endures." Others join until the whole square thunders with your name. This is no longer mourning. This is no longer ritual. This is movement. And you feel the ground shift beneath your feet. Not the soil of the pit, but the soil of the living world. Because once belief becomes banner, it no longer stays in one town. It marches. You stand at the centre of it, torn between fear and awe, between dread and destiny. You did not choose this path, yet it has chosen you. The pit is patient, but the living are not. They will want more. More miracles, more laws, more proof that the keeper can save not only their souls, but their flesh. And you wonder, as the banner waves in the torchlight and the crowd roars your name, are you building a sanctuary or unleashing a war? The story of becoming a plague corpse collector was never about choice. It was about survival, and survival often shapes monsters out of men. What began as a grim duty, hauling the nameless dead into pits, became a descent into shadows where hunger, fear, and sickness stripped away the last threads of ordinary life. You carried corpses, but also the silence of the living, the guilt of families too weak to bury their own, and the weight of a city that had forgotten your name yet demanded your service. In time, the plague taught you what no scripture dared admit. Death rules as absolute sovereign. The church preached salvation. Kings demanded loyalty. But in the streets it was rats, bells, and shallow graves that wrote the law. And you, the lowest of labourers, found yourself transformed into its herald. The covenant with the pit was not victory nor redemption. It was surrender to inevitability. Yet in that surrender you gained something neither priests nor princes possessed: faith of the desperate. They gave you their dead, their prayers, and finally themselves. Whether you wanted it or not, you became their keeper. Perhaps that is the cruelest truth. The plague did not simply kill, it reordered the world. Those who once scorned you now worship at your feet, and the line between man and myth dissolves. The keeper endures, not because he wished to, but because the dead demanded it. And so the tale closes not with healing, but with transformation. You're no longer merely a corpse collector. You're the voice of the pit, the echo of 1,000 unmarked graves, the figure people turn to when even hope is too fragile to survive. In the end, death was worse than you thought, because it left you behind to carry it.